Good morning and welcome to the Food System Summit. We will be beginning shortly. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for logging in to the Food System Summit. We will be beginning shortly. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for logging in to the Food System Summit. We will be beginning shortly. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for logging in to the Rhode Island Food System Summit. We will be beginning in 1 minute. Good morning, everyone. Happy Inauguration Day and welcome everyone to the 5th annual and first virtual Food System Summit. This year's summit is entitled Taking the Lead, Improving Food Access in a Global Pandemic. It's a timely topic, as I'm sure everybody is aware. And I'm Catherine Flynn. I'm the Executive Director of the University of Rhode Island's Business Engagement Center, and I will be your MC today. We will be officially kicking off this event in a few minutes, but we thought we'd give you a quick preview of the day. First, you'll be hearing from some of the state's top leaders about how the pandemic has impacted food insecurity in our state. Then you'll be hearing from Viraj Puri, CEO of Gotham Greens, who will discuss how his company addresses food insecurity and promotes economic growth and opportunity in urban, low-income communities. Next, you'll hear from a panel of URI faculty and staff about how institutions of higher education can play a role in addressing food insecurity issues, both on and off campus. Then you'll hear from URI's own Dr. Allison Tovar and graduate student Fatima Tobar Santamaria, who will present their work on understanding the experience of food access stakeholders during the pandemic. Finally, you'll be hearing from a panel of state leaders and how they are addressing the food security crisis in Rhode Island. With this event, we hope to start a dialogue about what's happening in Rhode Island and what we can do to help those families in need. We will make every effort to end the event just as soon as the inauguration begins. Throughout the day, feel free to ask questions of our speakers by accessing URI's Hamilton School of Communications and Media Facebook and YouTube pages. If time allows, we'll be pulling questions from our audience to pose to our speakers. And don't forget to include the hashtag RIFoodSummit21 when you post about today's event on social media. Recognizing that today is Inauguration Day, as I said, we will make every effort to finish it up as in advance of the ceremonies beginning at noon. Before we get started for the day, I'd like to take some time to talk about URI's new online educational initiative, URI Online. Today's marketplace is eager for professionals who possess the skills, knowledge, and vision to take an organization to the next level. And URI Online will provide you with the education you need to distinguish yourself as a leader in today's workforce. Here's a quick video and more about URI Online.
Today's marketplace is eager for professionals who possess the skills, knowledge, and vision to take an organization to the next level. For folks looking for career advancement, enhanced skill sets, and professional development, URI Online provides the education you need to distinguish yourself as a leader in today's workforce. For those who are in attendance today at the University of Rhode Island Food Summit, some of our programs you might be interested in include our Master of Science in Dietetics, our Graduate Certificate in Fisheries Science, our Professional Master of Science in Supply Chain Management and Applied Analytics, and our Undergraduate Certificate in Cannabis Studies. We have many interesting degree and certificate programs, so be sure to visit our website to learn more. URI Online. Learn anywhere with us.
The online certificate in cannabis studies program that was just mentioned in that video is an entirely new initiative for URI and one that meets the needs of a fast-growing industry. We also hope you'll take a look at some of the other programs mentioned, such as dietetics, fisheries science, supply chain management, etc. There's all kinds of ways to build your skills and expertise at URI Online in some of these critical areas. Since the pandemic began, many of us at URI have been working, including me, and studying, including me, remotely to ensure that we are meeting the CDC guidelines for social distancing. For those of you who know the campus well, we miss the sound of the bells at Davis Hall marking the hour and the activity on the quad all year round. For those of us who are feeling a little bit homesick for URI, here's a quick aerial video of URI campus. Can't wait to get back there. Before we get started with the main event, I want to give you a quick preview of what we have in store for the next few months. Starting in February, the Rhode Island Food Center at URI will be hosting several follow-on events about food security and food access. Here's a quick preview of some of the upcoming events before we get started. As you can see, there's some really great events coming up after this one, and please make sure you save the mornings of February 24th, March 10th, and March 24th for these events, and you can visit our website to register. We also invite you to follow up with us on Twitter at @URI_BEC to get more news and updates from the Business Engagement Center and the Food Center. Once again, we're very excited for today's Rhode Island Food System Summit. We thank you for joining us for the pre-summit activities, and we'll get started with the summit in just a minute. Good morning, and thank you for logging in to the Rhode Island Food System Summit. We'll be beginning momentarily. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Rhode Island Food System Summit. Thank you for logging in. We'll be beginning shortly. Good morning, everyone, and happy Inauguration Day. Welcome to the 5th Annual and first virtual Food System Summit entitled Taking the Lead, Improving Food Access in a Global Pandemic. We're excited to have over 400 people attending virtually today. I'm Catherine Flynn, and I'm the Executive Director of the University of Rhode Island Business Engagement Center, and I will be your MC today. As you know, this year's event will focus on the effects of the global pandemic and the growing food insecurity crisis. The pandemic has impacted our lives in so many ways, not just in how we interact with each other, but also how we run our businesses, how we access healthcare, and how we acquire our food. In the past year, so many families across the entire nation have experienced unprecedented loss and unemployment, and as a result, have had difficulty accessing adequate housing and food to feed themselves. In a recent report by Feeding America, food insecurity could rise nationally to over 50 million people, including 17 million children. In Rhode Island, food insecurity continues to soar. In a recent report produced by the Rhode Island Food Bank, 25% of Rhode Islanders, or 1 in 4 households, are worried about accessing adequate food. This has an impact on overall health and well-being, disproportionately impacts those in Rhode Island's Black and Latinx communities. Something needs to be done. Today, you'll hear from experts across the state on efforts that are currently underway at the University of Rhode Island and at the state level to figure out how we can address the growing food insecurity. We hope to start a dialogue today about what's happening in Rhode Island and what we can do for those families in need. For those of you just tuning in, this morning you'll hear from our state's top leaders on how the pandemic has impacted food insecurity in our state. Then you will hear from Viraj Puri, CEO of Gotham Greens, who will discuss how his company addresses food insecurity and promotes economic growth and opportunity in urban low-income communities. Next, you'll hear from a panel of URI faculty and staff about how institutions of higher education can play a role in addressing food security issues both on and off campus. Then you'll hear from URI's own Dr. Allison Tovar and her graduate student Fatima Tobar Santamaria, who will present their work on understanding the experience of food access stakeholders during the pandemic. Finally, you'll hear from a panel of state leaders and how they are addressing the growing food security crisis in Rhode Island. With this event, we hope we can start a dialogue about what's happening in Rhode Island and what we can do to help those families in need. We will be taking periodic breaks, so you can grab coffee, stretch your legs. During the breaks, we'll show videos of URI's food assets and farms, so be sure to stay tuned in. We are pleased to welcome Rhode Island's Governor, Gina Raimondo, Deputy Director of the Rhode Island Department of Health, Anna Novesh, URI President David Dooley, Associate Director of Health, Carol Hall Walker, Chief of Agriculture at the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management, Ken Ayers, and many others from across URI, state, and local government. We would also like to thank our event supporters, including the URI College of Environment and Life Science, the Rhode Island Department of Health, the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management, and this year's Food Summit is being live streamed by the Harrington School at URI, the Harrington School of Communications at URI. I'd also like to thank our event staff, Sharon Pavignano, Katie McGuinn, Leah Cooper, and Olivia Williams. Throughout the day, please feel free to ask questions of our speakers by accessing the URI Harrington School Communication speakers. And don't forget to include the hashtag Rhode Island Food Summit 21 when you post about today's events on social media. Recognizing that today is an exciting day, it's Inauguration Day, we are going to make sure that we finish up the summit in advance of the ceremonies beginning at noon. Next, I would like to show a pre-recorded welcome from President Dooley.
Welcome to the 5th annual and first virtual Rhode Island Food System Summit. We especially want to welcome Governor Raimondo and representatives from her office, the Secretary of State, Nellie Gorbea, Assistant Secretary of the Executive Office of Health and Human Services, Anna Novesh, Chief of Agriculture at the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management, Ken Ayers, members of my senior leadership team, as well as representatives from the Office of U.S. Senators Jack Reed and Sheldon Whitehouse, and representatives from the Rhode Island Departments of Health and Environmental Management. 2020 has been one heck of a year, and 2021 also promises to be a heck of a year for all of us with the ongoing pandemic and all of the other challenges we collectively face. We have seen across the nation, and certainly here in our home state, the degree to which businesses, families, and many members of our communities are experiencing unprecedented impacts and are struggling to stay afloat as a result of this pandemic. However, we believe that Rhode Island and the University of Rhode Island are uniquely positioned to address some of the greatest issues facing our state and our nation, for that matter. There is no greater evidence of our focus on these challenges than the panels of experts that you will learn from today that are leading the world in understanding and addressing the impacts of the pandemic, especially around food security issues, which are important, critical, and central problems for us to solve. As the land and sea grant institution of the state, URI is committed to important research and to develop the scientific tools, infrastructure, management programs, policies, and outreach programs to foster healthy communities. The role of the university in supporting the Rhode Island food system through the various programs and services that exist here at URI, including academic programs in sustainable agriculture, nutrition and food sciences, fisheries, animal and veterinary sciences, among many others. In addition, URI's farms donate thousands of pounds of food to URI students and community members in need, and URI works with the Farms to Families Food Box program to distribute 81,000 pounds of food to URI students and community members in need. We also support our communities through the university's cooperative extension outreach efforts to translate research results into information that people can use to improve their lives and strengthen their families. Earlier this year, the Master Gardener Program launched an initiative to encourage Rhode Islanders to develop a stronger connection to the local food system, including encouraging residents to donate a portion of their own harvests to help local food pantries. U.S. Senator Jack Reed provided over $100,000 to URI to reduce food waste and to help increase access of Rhode Islanders in need to healthy, locally grown food. URI's Academic Health Collaborative brings together students, faculty, clinicians, and researchers engaged in interdisciplinary work in health sciences to educate thoughtful, skilled health professionals who understand the broad and multifaceted aspects of caring for communities and keeping them healthy and safe. The Academic Health Collaborative has been directly involved in the state's coronavirus response efforts since the start of this pandemic. Dr. Allison Tovar from URI's College of Health Sciences and graduate student Fatina Tobar Samanteria, you will hear from today, will present their work on understanding the experience of food access stakeholders during the pandemic. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming together again here in 2021 at URI, and we hope you enjoy every minute of the 2021 Rhode Island Food System Summit.
Thank you very much, President Dooley. And we also have a pre-recorded welcome from Rhode Island Governor Gina Raimondo.
Hi, everyone. It's Governor Raimondo. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to bring attention to the critical issue of food insecurity in Rhode Island. When COVID-19 hit, we faced too many crises all at once. Families across the state lost jobs and income. Schools closed, and many kids rely on school to get their meals. And we had to adapt traditional food assistance programs to serve some of our most vulnerable Rhode Islanders. The need is still immense. The Rhode Island Food Bank has reported that since the pandemic began, 1 in 4 households in our state has worried that they won't have enough to eat. Black and Latino families are facing even higher rates of food insecurity. Since March, we've seen an enormous level of commitment, creativity, and flexibility from our food community. Organizations across the state have banded together to meet the needs. We even saw our educational institutions like URI step up to help Rhode Islanders in need. Together, we've helped a lot of families. But there is so much more to do. We have to meet the most basic needs of Rhode Islanders. We can't plan on returning to the economy we had before the pandemic began. We have to do better. We have to build a more equitable and resilient Rhode Island where everyone has enough to eat. It's on us. It's on every single one of us to make that happen. So thank you to all of you for your dedication to this vital work. People's lives depend on it. And let's keep going.
Thank you, Governor Raimondo. We also have a pre-recorded welcome from Assistant Secretary of the Executive Office of Health and Human Services, Anna Novesh.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anna Novais, and you used to know me and see me as the Deputy Director for the Department of Health, but today I'm also joining you as the new Assistant Secretary for the Executive Office of Health and Human Services. So I bring you greetings from both the Department of Health and EOHHS. Today's topic, it's important, and that we're doing it from a distance talks about the times that we're living in. This past 2020 year has been a year of challenges, but also a year of opportunities. The pandemic, the COVID-19 response has been the biggest public health challenge that we faced in our years. As professionals, as states, as an agency, we needed to come together and respond in a way that was unprecedented for us. However, that also shows that we've known all along how to work together. And addressing food insecurity in Rhode Island, it's another example of how we've done so in partnership. Rhode Island Department of Health has had a long history of addressing food insecurity in our state, so partnering with our institutions of higher education, such as URI, so the setting that we are today, it's also important for those who can be in a physical place. For those of us who are joining from a distance, it is important to remember that we do this work not by ourselves, not only the partners that I've talked about, but also our community partners. And the great example of that partnership is the work that the department has done with the health equity zones addressing the issues of food insecurity. And it's important that we start the year focusing on it. All of the data that we know from the Community Food Bank 2020 status report on hunger in Rhode Island tells us how 1 in 4 households lack adequate food, and how 25% of our households were worried about having adequate food in 2020. Also, that same report tells us how our Black and Latin communities in Rhode Island have had more cases and hospitalizations for COVID, and how the issues of hunger have been hitting them even more. And those partnerships with our community-based organizations, the partnerships with agencies like you, help us support our communities in ways that we'll not be able to do before. So not only focusing on how we support them today, but making sure that together we draft the plans, the visions for addressing the long-term systemic issues that need to be addressed, so these data points no longer are a reality in years to come. I'm sure you guys are going to be doing an amazing job doing that today through the summit, and I look forward to hearing from all of you your recommendations from a policy perspective of how the state continues to move forward successfully in addressing hunger and in addressing food security in our state. So thank you and have a great day.
Thank you very much, Anna. URI has long partnered with the Department of Health, and the partnership has grown even stronger through this year and the COVID-19 crisis. So thank you. Before I introduce our next speaker and we move on to the main part of the agenda, I wanted to just mention that I had the first opportunity to meet Viraj when he was considering finding a location in Rhode Island. We worked with him very closely, and it was a thrill when he finally chose a location in Providence for his facility. Let's watch a video about Gotham Greens before I introduce our main speaker.
Gotham Greens is a fresh food company farming with the future in mind. We built the nation's first commercial-scale rooftop greenhouse in the heart of New York City back in 2011, with the mission of creating a local urban farming company that offered city dwellers fresh, high-quality produce all year round. Nearly 10 years later, our farms look a bit different, but our mission remains the same. We are continuing to transform how and where fresh produce is grown, and we are building sustainable greenhouses all across America. In the United States, 98% of lettuce is grown in 2 states, California and Arizona. By the time conventional produce makes its way to grocery stores in places like Chicago, New York City, and Boston, the greens are typically at least a week old. This not only impacts flavor, freshness, and shelf life, but also leads to increased food waste for both supermarkets and consumers. We've set out to disrupt the conventional supply chain by building a network of regional greenhouses across the country. This means that no matter where you live, you can enjoy local salad greens, herbs, dressings, and sauces from Gotham Greens. Local cultivation and regional distribution helps us deliver our products quickly after being harvested to ensure they are fresh tasting, nutritionally dense, and long lasting. Today, we own and operate one of the largest networks of high-tech greenhouses across the country, including 3 in New York City, 2 in Chicago, as well as locations in Providence, Rhode Island, Baltimore, Maryland, and Aurora, Colorado. Our locally grown packaged salads, herbs, dressings, and sauces can be found at grocery stores across more than 30 states, as well as at local food co-ops and independent supermarkets. Local favorites include our new crispy green leaf, as well as popular salad greens like butterhead lettuce and greenhouse crunch. We love using them for lettuce wraps, sandwich toppers, or simply a heaping healthy salad. Eating more plants is better for you and better for the environment. We know that green produce starts with green decisions, and we strive to do more with less. Agriculture is the largest user of land and fresh water on the planet, and it's the leading cause of global water pollution. Our sustainable hydroponic growing practices enable us to use 95% less water and 97% less land than conventional farming practices. Our team takes food safety seriously and is dedicated to growing the cleanest greens free of chemical pesticides. Today, Gotham Greens operates approximately 11 acres of greenhouse and produces the crop equivalent to more than 400 acres. All of our facilities are sun and wind powered and climate controlled for a year-round growing season. Gotham Greens is dedicated to urban renewal and becoming permanent fixtures in the neighborhoods surrounding our greenhouses. By partnering with local schools, community gardens, and nonprofits, we're able to put better food on the table. These programs are rooted in the communities where we work, live, and play, but the impact extends beyond the borders of our neighborhoods. To learn more about Gotham Greens and our line of sustainable local produce and fresh foods, visit our website at gothamgreens.com.
I have to tell everybody that I'm a big fan of the butterhead lettuce, and if anybody wants to buy it, it's in many of the local stores here in Rhode Island. It's time now to hear from our keynote speaker, Viraj Puri, CEO of Gotham Greens. Viraj co-founded Gotham Greens in 2009 after leading startup enterprises in the United States, India, and Malawi, focused on sustainable agriculture, green building, renewable energy, and environmental design. He's been awarded fellowships from TED, Wild Gift, and Environmental Leadership Program, and is recognized as one of the 100 most intriguing entrepreneurs of 2020 by Goldman Sachs and Crain's New York Business 40 and on Crain's New York Business 40 Under 40 list. His work has been published in several books and journals, including Innovation on Tap, 100% Renewable Energy Autonomy in Action, and the UN Academic Journal. Welcome, Viraj.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for that warm introduction, and good morning to everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I wanted to share that video just to set the table for my talk. I figure a video speaks 1,000 words, and I'm just really honored and privileged to be here today, particularly because of the support we've received from the University of Rhode Island and the greater Rhode Island community in terms of elected officials, local businesses, academic institutions, nonprofits. There's just such a rich and thriving food ecosystem in Rhode Island, and we are honored and delighted to be a part of it, a small part of it. So I'm just going to walk you through some slides. Our mission from day one has been to really reimagine how and where fresh produce is grown. When one thinks of fresh produce, one thinks of tropical areas, perhaps California, Arizona, but one doesn't think about derelict industrial, post-industrial areas in some of our nation's largest cities. And so we had this vision to really leverage this technology to farm with the future in mind and operate a whole network of sustainable greenhouses in cities across America. So while our farming practices are unconventional, our commitment to sustainability, taste, quality is far from it. Really what drove me and my partners to start this business was really trying to address a problem. I studied environmental science and environmental engineering, and I was always sort of drawn to natural resource issues, and was very just staggered to learn about what a large consumer of natural resources agriculture is. As was noted in the video, it's the largest consumer of land on the planet. It's the largest consumer of fresh water, the leading source of global water pollution. And even more sobering is that half of the fresh produce that we grow in the United States is thrown away. So it decomposes in landfills, and it's just such a waste. And then on top of that, there are a lot of inherent risks with the current supply chain, being so centralized in these small pockets of the Central Valley of California and Yuma, Arizona. It requires that the produce, once it's grown and harvested and packaged, has to be shipped across the country, and we're dealing with highly perishable commodities that don't have a lot of shelf life. The irrigation relies on depleting groundwater reserves. These are growing regions that are going through persistent drought. And on top of that, they're often irrigated. The crops are often irrigated through open canals and ditches, which can be contaminated with runoff from manure from farm animals. So there's a lot of people that get sick eating leafy greens. There's more. The CDC reports more foodborne illness in the US coming from leafy greens than it does from meat. So we just felt like we had to address some of these problems with a more compelling solution. So enter indoor agriculture. We certainly did not invent indoor agriculture. It's been developed and practiced on a commercial scale in many parts of the world for the past 30 or 40 years, but it wasn't widespread, wasn't deployed in a widespread way in the United States. And certainly consumers didn't know a lot about this amazing technology. So our concept was, let's invest some of those dollars into finding effective solutions for the supply chain, and let's grow these specialty produce items in close proximity to consumers so they get a fresher, more nutritious, more flavorful product, and they can get behind a company that tries to make a positive impact in the communities in which we locate our greenhouses. So we talked a little bit about the supply chain, about how centralized it is, and our model is to really decentralize that and build a whole network of these regional growing facilities. So the produce can be local no matter where you are, whether you're in Chicago or in Providence or in Washington, D.C., you're always getting local produce from Gotham Greens. We now have 8 greenhouses around the country, spanning 500,000 square feet and growing. We have a few new facilities under construction. Using these advanced hydroponic methods, we use 95% less water. So all the irrigation water that we use is recaptured for reuse. We use a lot less land. So what we can grow in 1 acre of greenhouse would require around 35 acres out in the field. And all of our greenhouses are powered by renewable electricity. We started in 2009 is when I, with my partners, wrote the business plan for Gotham Greens. We ended up building our first greenhouse in 2011. And today we now have almost 400 full-time employees in 6 US states. We started off humbly with a small rooftop greenhouse in Brooklyn, New York in 2011, followed by the world's first greenhouse integrated into a supermarket where we partnered with Whole Foods back in 2013. And then that led to other expansions and really interesting adaptive reuse projects. The first project we did was built on top of a former bowling alley, almost 100-year-old building in an industrial part of Brooklyn, New York. The second project with Whole Foods was built on the banks of the Gowanus Canal at a brownfield site. And the Gowanus Canal is one of the most polluted waterways in the US and is a super EPA designated Superfund site. And Whole Foods certainly had the vision to come in and refurbish this industrial corridor. And we were delighted to be part of the transformation of this formerly industrial kind of neglected area that was facing a lot of poverty and blight. Our third project was on top of, at one time, was the largest toy factory in America, the Ideal Toy Company that used to make the Rubik's Cube and the teddy bear. And this is located in Hollis, Queens in New York City. And the building had fallen into disrepair and did not have a lot of occupancy. And we met the landlord and offered to lease his rooftop to build this enormous greenhouse on it. So we're very excited about that. And then in 2015, we expanded to Chicago, Illinois, and built a greenhouse on the far south side of Chicago in partnership with Method Company at a former steel mill, the former Ryerson steel mill. And this is located in the Pullman historic area where the Pullman railway coaches used to be made back in the 18th and 19th century. And then enter Providence. We built a large greenhouse in Providence to grow fresh produce for the New England market. as well as another one in Chicago, one in Baltimore, Maryland, and one in Denver, Colorado. And each project has an interesting story. The one in Denver, for example, is built at the former Stapleton Airport on top of a landfill area that the airport used to use, and a little bit of the greenhouse is on the former runway. And the one in Baltimore is built at the former Bethlehem steel plant, which at one point was the largest steel producing factory in the world that employed 30,000 people, that went through bankruptcy about 10 years ago and lost all those jobs. So we're part of this new crop of companies, no pun intended, that are seeking to revitalize this area of Baltimore. So Providence, our site in Rhode Island and in Providence specifically, that some of you may know, is located at the former General Electric Baseworks factory that was opened in 1916. And they used to manufacture bases for light bulbs, for filament light bulbs. And its peak employed about over 10,000 people. Unfortunately, this factory closed in the 1990s, taking the jobs with it, and left behind this empty brownfield that stayed vacant for over 20 years. So in partnership with the state of Rhode Island, the city of Providence, and their economic development support, Gotham Greens acquired this parcel in 2018 and painstakingly restored it and built this large 100,000 square foot state-of-the-art greenhouse facility that opened in late 2019. And this is one of the most state-of-the-art, technologically advanced greenhouse facilities anywhere in the world, really. It's completely climate controlled. It has sensors located all over that are tracking temperature and humidity and light level and carbon dioxide and all these other variables that are very important for our growers to maintain the appropriate climate in the greenhouse. And then we can, using computer control systems and algorithms, we adjust the climate to create these optimal growing conditions. So the crops can thrive 365 days of the year, regardless of the outside weather conditions. And then we use these drip irrigation techniques using hydroponics. So there's no soil in this facility. We grow using a mineral nutrient solution, which is a very effective way to grow a large amount of crops in a small area. So you can achieve a lot of water savings and land savings. And really we can because we're not growing in the soil, we can adaptively reuse brownfields and formerly environmentally contaminated sites, because all the crops grow in table systems that are raised off of the floor. We have some supplemental lighting systems that we can employ in the winter months to boost our photosynthesis and yields on those dark, snowy, cloudy winter days. We primarily rely on natural sunlight, though. The entire building is made of glass. And so we primarily rely on natural light to grow the crops. And all the products are pesticide free. So we use beneficial insects to do a lot of our pest management. So we introduce predator insects into the greenhouse every week to prey on any bad insects that might harm our crops. And what comes out of this is primarily leafy greens. So we grow lettuces, about 20 different types of lettuce. And we sell them in different formats, either through supermarkets or institutions and restaurants. Obviously, this past year has been a little bit challenging for food service and restaurants, but we have been able to shift a lot of that business to grocery stores. And then some years ago, we also expanded into some other products like cooking sauces and dips like pestos and salad dressings as well, made using the herbs that we grow in our greenhouses. And a lot of great applications, obviously, for the produce. A big theme that I want to talk about today is, our core business is, of course, growing and selling produce. We are a commercial scale enterprise, but we are really firmly rooted in urban revitalization and community partnerships and development. It's a big part of why we started this business. We really believe in the power of plants and the power of farming and gardening to transform cities, transform people's hearts, minds, improve their diets, contribute to quality of life and public health. And plants just really have this amazing healing power. And the people around the world in cities are turning empty lots, rooftops, fire escapes, roadways, sidewalks into urban green space. And it's so important. And in a small way, Gotham Greens wants to contribute to this very powerful movement that's taking root around the world. We partner with local schools, community leaders, nonprofit groups in an effort to really get better food on the table, to educate people around healthy eating and some of the benefits of eating more plants in one's diet. And we do this through a variety of community initiatives. So one thing we do is we just donate produce to food banks in the Providence area. We work with Amos House. We work with the Rhode Island Community Food Bank, among others. In all the cities in which we partner, in Maryland with the Food Bank, in New York with City Harvest, in Chicago with the Greater Chicago Food Depository, so on and so forth. We also have a very robust seedling donation program. So every year we are donating tens of thousands of little seedlings, either to school classroom gardens or to community gardens as starter plants, as well as working with some schools on some curriculum around hydroponics and indoor growing, and sort of what a plant needs to grow. And there's just a real great pedagogical benefit to students of all ages and adults alike, I would say, learning about how plants grow, because a lot of city dwellers are increasingly disconnected from how food is grown. And we believe urban gardening and hydroponics is a great, very compelling solution to get more people to understand how plants are grown. So really want to talk about the support we received in the state of Rhode Island and in the city of Providence to build this project. It was a very complicated project. We could have gone out and bought farmland in a more rural area, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. But given our interest and commitment to urban revitalization, we probably found the most complicated site that we could have built a project on. Just years of neglect, contamination issues. The sites bordering the Woonasquatucket River, and there was a lot of issues around the riverbank and retaining walls, and we had to really work very closely with the Rhode Island Coastal, the CRMC, the Narragansett Bay Commission, and really want to speak to the leadership of Governor Gina Raimondo, who I had an opportunity to meet about 4 years ago. I visited her office, talked about Gotham Greens, and we were a much smaller company back then. And she saw our vision and was very committed to attracting Gotham Greens to locate in Rhode Island, and specifically Providence, because at the time we had been looking at other cities as well in the New England area. And we partnered with the Commerce Department and the Rebuild Rhode Island program to be able to get some tax benefits to offset some of the costs it would take to remediate this environmentally contaminated brownfield. So I really appreciate her leadership, the leadership of Mayor Alorza and his team and the Providence Redevelopment Authority. And something unique that we did is we actually donated almost an acre of our land to the Providence Redevelopment Authority, so the city could actually build a bike path to help connect downtown communities to riverfront communities, to downtown. And so this was one critical stretch along that waterfront, Woonasquatucket waterfront corridor that was not publicly owned. It was privately owned, and Gotham Greens at the time owned it. So we donated that land to the city, and the city in turn has been very supportive in our redevelopment efforts. And so it really took a whole community, and we're just very proud of the partnerships that we've made. And then after the facility was built, we partnered with many local restaurants, many grocery stores, many other community partners, including the Rhode Island Nursery and Landscape Association, and all the great work that they're doing to get more people into vocational training around plants and greenhouses and the nursery industry. Amos House and the really important work that they do. Food organizations like Hope in Maine, Rhode Island Food Bank, the Steel Yard. We partnered with them to do some really cool art installations at our site and bike racks. Farm Fresh Rhode Island is another great leader at the forefront of the sustainable and regional food movement. The University of Rhode Island, We Share Hope, Johnson & Wales, among others. So we are really excited to be part of the broader community. And like I said, seedling donation is a big thing that we do. We think healthy eating and strong environmental choices starts with young students. And growing little starter plants can be difficult. So we try to give our school partners and teachers a little bit of a leg up by giving them some healthy, robust seedlings that they can use in their community gardens. So if you know of any schools that are interested, or community gardens for that matter, that are interested in seedlings, please don't hesitate to reach out to Gotham Greens. I think in addition to sort of growing fresh produce and creating these jobs, we really want to be evangelists and help advance this movement around the world. When we started this business back in 2009, 2010, people thought we were crazy. Who would want to grow produce in these environmentally contaminated industrial areas and cities? And fast forward 10 years, there are projects and companies like this sprouting up globally. We get inquiries from countries around the world on a weekly basis, asking for insight or how we've done things. And now we're one of dozens of companies in the US that are growing lettuce, tomatoes, other types of fresh vegetable commodities in these hydroponic greenhouses, leveraging this amazing technology. And we feel proud that we've been able to help advance this industry and really be advocates for it. And we invite all of you to follow along and join us on social media and follow our work as we continue to build greenhouses in different cities across the US and try to really make a positive impact into reshaping our food system to make it more robust, more sustainable, more equitable. And it's going to take a lot of different solutions. You know, I don't believe that hydroponic greenhouses are the silver bullet or this panacea to solving all the systemic issues facing our food system, but I think it can play a small role. I think different types of solutions need to be employed, and it's going to take a variety of different technology solutions, business plans, and but we firmly believe that hydroponic greenhouses can certainly play a role in that. So that concludes my presentation, and with the time that I have remaining, I would be delighted to answer any questions from the audience. And I'm just going to get my question bar up through the software, so bear with me for a second. Okay, great. First question is, would Gotham Greens as a small business be negatively affected by increasing the federal minimum wage? So we would not be. We are proud to say that we pay well above minimum wage, what we believe to be a living wage in all the markets that we work in. And that's something that's very important to us. So we are strong advocates actually to increase that. And you know, most farm workers in this country actually get paid not by hour, but they get paid by day, or they get paid by how much produce they pick, almost by the pound. And they don't receive overtime and any of these things. And Gotham Greens could have, by statute, paid its employees using farm worker wages, but we never have. We've always treated them as manufacturing employees. Question around what we grow. So yes, Gotham Greens primarily focuses on leafy greens, and we do this because they are a very, very popular, they're the most popular after like potatoes. They're the next most popular and most consumed produce item. So it's about a $15 billion market. And I forget off the top of my head how many billions of pounds that is that Americans consume every year. And given a lot of the issues with the supply chain, as I pointed out in the presentation, we believe that this is a very important commodity to grow using fewer resources in this more robust supply chain, and also grow it more nutritionally dense. Our tests have revealed that our lettuces have higher mineral content, vitamin content, and it's a very important part of a healthy diet. And there are other types of crops that can grow very well, that thrive in sort of a hydroponic growing system, which include vine crops such as tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers and things like that. And there's a lot of great companies that are already growing those types of commodity products in the US. So our focus has really been on leafy greens to popularize that whole category of fresh produce. And but our team is working on R&D for different types of crops, and there are a lot of researchers actually working on things like strawberries and other types of soft fruit that might be the next type of crop variety that might be commercialized for greenhouse production in the years to come. That's a great question. Okay, great question here. This is around our packaging. So it is very tough for us to be able to reconcile all of our environmental values with having to use these plastic containers when we sell our greens in supermarkets. And it's something that we've struggled with a lot. And when we first launched the business, we actually were selling our lettuce in these little cardboard compostable containers. And unfortunately, what we found is that the containers were acting as a desiccant and actually sucking the moisture out of the leaves, and the leaves were wilting much quicker, and we didn't get the shelf life. And so then we started looking at sort of what's known as bioplastics, which are containers made using cornstarch. And then what we found is that wasn't really very sustainable when one really looked at the life cycle analysis of how that corn is grown, the water, the fertilizer, the GMO seeds, and then actually those plastic containers, even though they're made of plants, are not really compostable in most cities. They don't compost in one's backyard. It really requires industrial scale composting facilities, of which there are very few in the US. So that didn't seem like a very compelling solution. So we sort of went to what we thought is the least of all evils, if you will, which is a recycled plastic, which is recyclable. But the industry is certainly evolving and trying to find more sustainable packaging solutions, because consumers have spoken. And I think pre-pandemic, there was many people really pushing consumer product companies and packaging companies to come up with more sustainable alternatives to get away from single-use plastic. And we are certainly very committed to doing that. The reality is that for our products to be successful, we need to have sturdy containers for them so they last long and they don't end up in the landfill. And unfortunately, plastic is the most compelling solution today. But I am cautiously optimistic that in the years to come, the packaging industry is going to come up with some sustainable alternatives, and Gotham Greens will be first in line to adopt some of those more sustainable technologies. A question of the rooftops. So why rooftops? So, we started off on rooftops mostly because we were so committed to being advocates for this idea and promoting this idea. And we were such a small company with not a lot of financial backing. And it was just cost prohibitive, frankly speaking, for us to find land in cities. We really wanted to be urban farmers. And land in cities is expensive. We're from New York. That's where the company was started. It's the most expensive real estate market in the country. Land is very hard to come by and prohibitively expensive. So we started looking at rooftops as a potential viable alternative. And we approached a lot of landlords to say, hey, you're not really doing anything with your rooftop. Would you consider leasing it to us for a very sort of modest lease rate? And most landlords thought we were crazy, would not entertain building a building on top of their buildings. And so that was something that it took a lot of convincing, but we just thought it was such a great way to adaptively reuse this otherwise unused space. It was also important for us to get relatively unobstructed space. We didn't want to be in the shadows of taller buildings, considering our plants need sunlight to grow. And so by being on a rooftop, one is that much higher up and not sort of shaded from other buildings. And then finally, we just thought it was an amazing way to not take up new land, right? And also just get the message out about what we were trying to do. It was sort of a novel concept, and we really benefited from some of the marketing and some of the public relations that we were able to get, media exposure, due to the uniqueness of the project. In terms of operations, it can be challenging to do something on a rooftop, right? When you're really retrofitting a commercial farm on top of a building, one has to contend with structural engineering and elevators and electricity and plumbing, and how do you get the water up, and how do you get your employees up and down safely, and make it accessible for people with disabilities. And so it was, very challenging, but we were able to do 3 or 4 very successful rooftop projects. But then ultimately, our business was mandating that we needed to build much larger and larger facilities. So by locating on the ground, we could do that, right? Because rooftops, some buildings are very large, but we figured we could get a lot more space on the grounds. But we really stayed with our commitment to urban farming and commitment to really interesting projects that are located in strategic areas. So while we're not on the rooftop anymore, we're still in cities, and we're still committed to partnering with interesting development partners. So we have a question around historically diverse communities and how do we try to make an impact, a positive impact. So it's really by engaging with the community. It's by creating jobs. It's by creating livelihoods. We're a business. We're a manufacturing business. And there's a lot of hard work every day that goes into seeding, transplanting, harvesting, packaging, and delivering our products every day. And the biggest impact we can make in our communities is to create jobs. And I know the elected officials and the economic development folks in and around Providence and other cities are very pleased that we've been able to create almost 400 jobs for working class people who may not have the best educational training or most skills. And we can pay them a good living wage with benefits and help to revitalize urban communities. So, we're not a retail business, or we're not attracting people to come visit our farms necessarily. It's really more about manufacturing and jobs. So we believe that is the most positive impact that we can make in communities and communities that are historically diverse. I have a question around development opportunities in our greenhouses, and absolutely. So all employees who join Gotham Greens go through a training program to learn about either food handling or food safety, food manufacturing, and if they're working closely with the plants, they get a training in basic plant biology, plant physiology, and there's many opportunities for upward mobility, and many of our entry-level growers and plant scientists have been sponsored for various courses and online courses with various universities, so they can improve their skills in horticulture and growing plants. And that's very important to us. And we have people who joined us at entry level in our first Brooklyn greenhouse who now have gone on to be plant managers in Rhode Island and Maryland and Colorado and places. So we really thrive ourselves on a lot of really strong retention. People really like working at Gotham Greens, and a lot of people have committed their careers to the company. And so we're really committed to upward mobility and professional development. Okay, I have a question around community partners to support food waste and food insecurity. Yes, so I addressed this a little bit in our presentation. We are always looking for community partners to partner with, both in Rhode Island as well as other states around the country. And our initiatives are either around food waste. So one great initiative we did was start a product called Ugly Greens. So the vast majority of our products are free of blemishes and bruises and things like that, and are generally sold either to restaurants or supermarkets. But during the harvesting and the packaging process, a small percentage of our lettuces and greens may get a little bit bruised or blemished. So rather than throw that away or have it composted, we decided to start bagging that and selling that sort of cosmetically damaged product as Ugly Greens. And it's at a very, very steep discount. And it's really more, it's not so much about making money off those products, but it's more about spreading awareness and shedding some light on the issue of food waste. And so we partnered with a bunch of different companies to highlight their work on social media and through conferences to talk about the food waste issue. And so that's something great that we've done. Companies like Hungry Harvest, Imperfect Foods, among others. And so that's one of the food waste initiatives. And we've also partnered with a brewing company called Toast Ale that they make beer using spent bread from bakeries and things like that. So that's a really interesting partner. So we welcome any partnership leads to talk about issues of food waste. And then we, like I mentioned, we have a very robust community garden support program and school classroom program where we donate seedlings. And so we invite any schools or urban gardening or farming companies to reach out to us to inquire about seedlings. And then of course there's food donation as well. So we welcome any leads for partnerships. I got received a question around the cost difference. So between our product and more conventionally grown product out from California, Arizona. And I'm pleased to say that there is no cost differential because we're able to cut out all the long haul trucking and all that distribution and the various middlemen that exist in that supply chain. We are able to deliver our products to supermarkets in a cost competitive way. And then they're able to offer the products to the end consumer in a cost competitive way. So if one is able to find our products in a grocery store, it'll often be priced similarly, if not cheaper, to products that come from California or Arizona. I think we have time for one or two more questions, and then we will wrap up. So just received a question around if we're looking to expand operations either in Rhode Island and in the Northeast. And the question is, the answer is yes. We will be expanding. Our greenhouses pretty much reached production capacity already. And so we have some room to expand at our site in Providence. And then we will also be looking for additional sites to locate in the Northeast and specifically the New England area. So as the demand is growing for these products and for our production system and our brand, we have a lot more production capacity to build up in order to meet that demand. As I mentioned earlier, this is a very large category. It's about $15 billion across the US annually. And currently products grown from indoor growing facilities such as ours make up just about 1% of that. So even if we were to capture 5 or 10% market share, we would have to exponentially increase our production capacity, and we intend to do that in a financially and environmentally sustainable way. Last question on, do we have any advice for businesses and companies looking to play a role in addressing food insecurity? This is a very complex question with a lot of systemic issues on, it starts with economic development, education, poverty alleviation, and a lot of the systemic issues that plague so many people in our country. So I'm not sure our advice, our advice would just be to learn about issues, learn about what some of the challenges are, go to a food bank and try to volunteer or understand some of, just the staggering amount of people who rely on food assistance, and just start by really wrapping one's head around the magnitude of the issue. And I think that provides perspective. And after that perspective is gained, then I think it provides opportunities to come up with creative ideas and ideas for innovation on how private businesses and community organizations can contribute to this very complex problem that's facing so many Americans on a daily basis.
Wow. Thank you, Viraj. That was amazing. And what great questions from the audience too. It's clearly Gotham Green's role in this community is clearly so appreciated, and thank you for your work. As a reminder, and seems like we have over 250 people online right now, but as a reminder, feel free to ask your questions to our speakers today by accessing the URI Harrington School of Communications, Media, and Facebook and YouTube pages. If time allows, as you've just seen, we will be pulling questions from our audience. Those questions that we are unable to get to, we will post the answers to the questions we receive on our website following the summit. And don't forget to post about the summit on social media using the hashtag Rhode Island Food Summit 21. We're going to take a short 10-minute break so that everyone can stretch and refill on their coffee. We'll be back exactly at 10:05 to hear from URI faculty and staff on their efforts to address the growing food insecurity of URI students. During the break, you will see this video about URI's agronomy farm. We'll play it in the beginning of the break and then again at the end of the break so you don't miss it. It's really exciting. We'll see you at 10:05.
The agronomy farm is on the URI campus. URI was founded as a college of agriculture. The agricultural experiment station actually predates the university itself by 4 years, and we've always had farms on campus.
We're here at the University of Rhode Island's Gardner Crops Research Center, which is informally known as the agronomy farm. And it's where we conduct research on vegetable crops, for instance, grain crops. And it's also a great teaching resource for the University of Rhode Island. So we hold labs here and classes. So it gives students hands-on experience. You know, I just love to grow plants, I love to grow food, and I just really enjoy imparting some of my knowledge to them and seeing them grow and develop through our Sustainable Agriculture and Food Systems program.
I work with students in two different ways. So I have my classes where we're working in a large group, but then I also use a lot of student labor in my projects. So I have a lot of students who work for me, and we're working much more one-on-one, and we really get to know each other. A lot of the students I've had over the years are now the farmers that I work with.
My name is Farid Geshem. I'm originally from Iran, and I'm working on saffron here and also on vegetables. This year is the 4th year that we work on saffron, and every year we had the acceptable or good yield, and even more than twice as Iran. In Rhode Island, all the farms are so small, and saffron is a best option because farmers no need to have the machines, and it's great for this area, I think.
So here at the agronomy farm, of course, I'm always harvesting food from my plots. And so our food is donated to a variety of organizations and groups. So some of it goes to the Rhode Island Community Food Bank. Some of it goes to the Johnny Cake and Food Pantry, for instance, in Wakefield. Also our own graduate village, because we do have food insecurity issues here on campus. And so, of course, it's the University of Rhode Island, and we want to take care of our own.
Just for everybody's knowledge, here is the list of the agenda for the day. Again, I'm Catherine Flynn, the Executive Director of the University of Rhode Island Business Engagement Center. I'm your MC for the day. We will be back at exactly 10:05 for our next panel. Thank you. Here's the agronomy farm video again.
The agronomy farm is on the URI campus. URI was founded as a college of agriculture. The agricultural experiment station actually predates the university itself by 4 years, and we've always had farms on campus.
We're here at the University of Rhode Island's Gardner Crops Research Center, which is informally known as the agronomy farm. And it's where we conduct research on vegetable crops, for instance, grain crops. And it's also a great teaching resource for the University of Rhode Island. So we hold labs here and classes. So it gives students hands-on experience. You know, I just love to grow plants, I love to grow food, and I just really enjoy imparting some of my knowledge to them and seeing them grow and develop through our Sustainable Agriculture and Food Systems program.
I work with students in two different ways. So I have my classes where we're working in a large group, but then I also use a lot of student labor in my projects. So I have a lot of students who work for me, and we're working much more one-on-one, and we really get to know each other. And a lot of the students I've had over the years are now the farmers that I work with.
My name is Farid Geshem. I'm originally from Iran, and I'm working on saffron here and also on vegetables. This year is the fourth year that we work on saffron, and every year we had the acceptable or good yield, and even more than twice as Iran. In Rhode Island, all the farms are so small, and saffron is a best option because farmers no need to have the machines, and it's great for this area, I think.
So here at the agronomy farm, of course, I'm always harvesting food from my plots. And so our food is donated to a variety of organizations and groups. So some of it goes to the Rhode Island Community Food Bank. Some of it goes to the Johnny Cake and Food Pantry, for instance, in Wakefield. Also our own graduate village, because we do have food insecurity issues here on campus. And so, of course, it's the University of Rhode Island, and we want to take care of our own.
Good morning, everyone. We will begin in 2 minutes with the next panel. Welcome back, everyone. We hope you enjoyed the video about URI's agronomy farm. Dr. Rebecca Brown and Dr. Geshem's saffron growing efforts at URI have been one of the most nationally and internationally followed stories for the university. It's very exciting that we can produce as much saffron in Rhode Island as they do in Iran. Next, we have a new panel coming up, and we'd like to welcome Dr. Kathy Collins. Dr. Kathy Collins is University of Rhode Island's Vice President of Student Affairs. She will be moderating a panel on higher education and URI's role in addressing food security. Kathy joined URI in 2016 from Michigan State University, and she's responsible for overseeing so many of URI's essential programs, including housing, residential life, dining services, club sports, counseling, etc. She has the tremendous task of leading URI's COVID-19 response efforts. I'd like to welcome Kathy, who will introduce our panelists.
Thank you, Catherine. It is such a pleasure to be with everyone today, and what a special day it is. At URI, the Division of Student Affairs is a comprehensive unit employing approximately 500 staff working in the areas of dining, housing, health and counseling, recreation, student involvement, student conduct, case management, disability services, and many more. All units in our Division of Student Affairs are focused on supporting our students as they learn, develop, grow, and graduate. Basic needs is a critical component of collegiate success, as written in the Fall 2019 Guide to Assessing Basic Needs in Food Insecurity, Homelessness, and Technological Insecurity in Higher Education. An individual's needs begin with safety, shelter, food, and water. These basic needs are also the needs of students in higher education. A student having to decide between, do I buy a toothbrush or do I get dinner, breaks your heart, as you also know they're trying to study and focus on graduation. These basic needs are the things that our division focuses on. While it's hard to accurately assess the needs of students enrolled in higher education, a study conducted in the fall of 2018 by Real College at 123 universities with a sample size of over 86,000 students told us the following. It's shocking. 45% of respondents were food insecure in the prior 30 days. 56% of respondents were housing insecure in the previous year, and 17% of respondents were homeless in the previous year. This was all reported before the pandemic. Surviving the pandemic for many of our students meant working with our school to learn more about financial aid, additional funding through CARES emergency funds, relying on food pantries on campus and food banks off campus. Our students navigated the pandemic. At URI, we pride ourselves in our work. You've heard from so many of our team on addressing the needs. After all, we are a land grant, sea grant, and flagship university, and we go to great lengths to support our students by providing caring staff and policies to help them while they navigate. We know our students, we know them, and we try our best to communicate with them from a place of care, and yet it seems it's never enough. Throughout the pandemic, we have provided comprehensive and free access to COVID testing. We've tested over 65,000 students already. In addition to that, we have not closed our housing, though many schools around the country did, because we know many of our students are facing basic homelessness. And we have provided food, thanks to the amazing support of so many of you around the state of Rhode Island and around the country, thanks to our farmers, to our staff, and others. Today, you're going to hear from many of our staff who are involved in this response. We also use our Students First Fund, a fund that was created years ago out of the basic needs our students had for not only food and shelter, but medicine and maybe travel expenses. The students were not able to afford that. We know every year in higher education, the amount of $500 separates many of our students just from being able to graduate. It might be because of parking tickets, an unpaid bill at the bookstore, other things. We know, and the world has shown us this year, that we need time to graduate. In addition to this, we also know that 50% of our students come from Rhode Island. And as Catherine shared in her opening remarks, we know the statistics across Rhode Island that 1 out of 4 homes is placing food insecurity. I want to now introduce to you one of our rock stars at the university. I want to introduce Dr. Jackie Tisdale, Assistant Dean of Outreach and Intervention. To me, she oversees our Life Happens situations. Dr. Tisdale, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you tell us about yourself and your role at URI?
Certainly. Good morning, everyone. So as Dr. Collins mentioned, I am Jackie Tisdale, and I often refer to myself and my office as the Life Happens office. My office is, generally speaking, a case management office where we are seeking to support students' needs outside of the classroom. That includes everything from perhaps I did something I shouldn't do to I don't know how to cover a particular expense, also including things like my family might be displaced from housing and we don't know how we're going to make it to the next week. So overall, myself and my team ensure that students have the resources they need, whether it's on campus or off campus, to get through from their day-to-day and ultimately to cross that stage with dignity like the rest of our students are able to do.
Can you tell us a little bit more specific in regards to your role and the role of your team on fighting food insecurity, something you and I have conversations about on a regular basis? What is URI doing about food insecurity?
Absolutely. So as folks have already discussed today, in order for us to start to address a concern, we actually need to understand what that really looks like on our own campus. So as you mentioned previously, while it is the case that nationally 40% of students reported being food insecure in the last 30 days, we needed to know, what does that actually mean for our own students? And so in 2019, we did take a look at what does that mean at the University of Rhode Island? And we learned during that time by report that about 13% of our students who completed the survey registered as being food insecure within the last 30 days. We also know that that number is probably underreported because we only can hear from the people who responded to the survey. So with that in mind, we enhanced the efforts that we were already doing on campus. And so I'll briefly share what some of those are. About 8 years ago now, Rhode Outpost Food Pantry was something created by our very own URI students in a class with Kathleen Gorman focusing on hunger. And the thought there was, there have to be some students on campus who are struggling to have adequate access to food. And they were correct. Since that time, the Rhode Outpost Food Pantry has grown immensely and is now overseen by a graduate student whose name is Safi Sanya. We refer to her as our Food and Housing Security Coordinator, and this is an effort in collaboration with Dining Services. In her role, she oversees all of the operations of Rhode Outpost Food Pantry. And just to give you a sense of what that means these days, in the last 4 months, we've had almost 5,000 pounds of food donated to assist our students. And we have given out over 3,200 pounds of that food, involving meeting with 354 unique students every single semester. We also have a Share a Swipe for Hope program, which was created to allow our students to get involved by donating one meal from their guest meals to another student. We're also utilizing the Student First Fund to support meals that students might otherwise not have access to. And since the time that the pandemic began, we have provided over $100,000 from donors to help our students have access to basic needs, one of which is food.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tisdale. I know people have been unbelievably generous, and yet the need is there, as I shared, that it just never seems to be enough. How can individuals get involved? How can people come together to provide assistance and help students at the University of Rhode Island, or maybe other institutions or colleges around the country that they're connected with, in fighting food insecurity, homelessness, and the basic struggles of our students that may keep them from graduating and getting their degree?
That's a great question. What I would suggest is that people pay attention to what efforts are happening on the campuses that they're near. So at URI, our campus has done a phenomenal job of donating food, following specifically the request for items. So for example, right now, we're looking for tuna and canned fruit. So the best way to get involved is take a look at what initiatives are happening on various campuses, donating through spaces such as the Student First Fund, and also donating gift cards, which are sometimes now more important than food donations.
Dr. Tisdale, thank you so much to you, Safi, and everyone else that's assisting with this. Next, I want to introduce you to our Director of Dining and Retail Operations at the University of Rhode Island. Mr. Pierre St. Germain has not only been involved heavily in our COVID response as we've adjusted and moved and changed all of our food operations. I want him to not only tell you a little bit about himself and his role at URI, but Pierre, you were involved in providing food across the state during this pandemic response. So if you could tell our listeners today and a little bit how URI Dining has responded to the pandemic. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at URI.
Thanks, Kathy. So as you said, my name is Pierre St. Germain. I'm the Director for Retail and Dining Food Service here on campus. And what that entails is generally speaking, overseeing the food service for all of campus, catering, et cetera. We produce about 2 million meals a year for the student body, for guests of the school and the community. And what you were just referring to, what we were able to do at the beginning of the pandemic was, thanks to partnerships that you had made, we were able to work with the Office of Healthy Aging here in Rhode Island. And we, in turn, were able to produce hundreds of meals a day and deliver them throughout the state to various centers where people who were either immunocompromised or elderly, or even if they were just simply food insecure, could go and pick up these meals. In total, we were producing meals from the middle of April through the end of June, and we produced and sent out over 25,000 meals to the community, the greater Rhode Island community.
In addition to that, I know personally just the fact that many of your staff who are so service focused, they were making masks, right? And sewing them in the dining centers after our students left at spring break. Can you tell us a little bit about just that activity that they did to help so many on campus and off campus?
Sure. It was brought up by actually one of our cook's helpers, Diana Bebo, who in turn asked if she could make some for some of the staff, which we thought was a great sort of positive action at the time. It was just becoming really apparent that that was a way to curb the virus. So we allowed her to do that. And then it sort of grew. She had other friends within dining services that could also sew. And so it seemed to make sense to have almost like a little factory where we were producing masks. We allowed them to do this throughout the time. We distributed them to different communities on campus and out into the greater community. It was really a positive thing, and it did gain a little national recognition.
Thank you so much to you and your team. Now, Pierre, oftentimes when you and I meet and talk, we talk about food. You know I'm a foodie. And one of the things I've been so passionate about is not only just that our efforts around food insecurity, because it breaks my heart in terms of thinking about that, but also that we as a dining service operation that does 2 million meals a day, we must provide local food. There are so many reasons for that. Can you tell us about the efforts in URI Dining to provide more local food from local farms around Rhode Island and get it to our students and teach them about the importance of local food, working with local farms?
Absolutely. So my previous life, if you will, was as a chef for many years. And so I have a real passion for food. Besides being a foodie, I feel that food is critically important to pretty much the conversation for anything. It brings people together. There's a term called commensality where people sort of sit down and dine together. So I think it's important that our students gain a level of education about food. So what we've tried to do is we've tried to not only partner with our local produce company, which is Rock's Produce, but we have in turn, over the last several years, I've worked to try and advance our relationships across campus, in particular with the College of Environmental and Life Sciences, to bring in more items from the farms. And so we allow for eggs and meats and produce all coming in from the farms. And now this past summer, we were able to have some of our student managers working on the farms so they could get an exposure to that experience.
Thank you so much, Pierre, to you and your team. And also thank you this past year for helping distribute over 40,000 pounds of food through the USDA that we were able to provide to our local community. I can't thank you enough. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Up next, we have Miss Deborah Shealy. Miss Shealy is the Associate Dean at the URI College of Environment and Life Sciences. Deborah, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at URI?
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm Debbie Sheely. I'm an Associate Dean of Cooperative Extension and Agricultural Programs in the College of the Environment and Life Sciences. I am a plant scientist by training, and before coming to URI 7 years ago, I spent 16 years in the U.S. Department of Agriculture. My job at URI is to oversee cooperative extension and agricultural experiment station research. As President Dooley mentioned, cooperative extension is the original public education and outreach arm of every land-grant university, including URI. Through our programs, we engage with the public, offering them research-based information to assist them in making better decisions for themselves, their families, their communities, and their businesses. Agricultural research is conducted at various locations around the state and often on one of the university's 3 farms. We teach classes to students and conduct cooperative extension programs on the farms as well. You've already seen a beautiful video about the agronomy farm, so you know about that one already. And you'll see other videos, but I'll just mention that at Peckham Farm, that's where our animal science research, teaching, and extension occurs. And it's also currently home to 4-H, our premium youth development program. And then on East Farm, we conduct research, teaching, and extension related to pollinators, fruit production, aquaculture, and fisheries. And it's also home to our Master Gardener Program volunteers who maintain a field house there, and as well as demonstration gardens and production greenhouses.
Thank you so much for that information. Can you tell us a little bit more? You just mentioned the Master Gardener Program. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Master Gardener Program and growing and harvesting food to people in need around the state? What is the role in that? And what do you want people to know today about just that incredible service that they provide the state of Rhode Island and throughout other states?
Sure. So our faculty and staff have been working really hard to help address food security issues on campus by donating fruits and vegetables grown on university farms to the Graduate Village apartment complex that's already been mentioned. I'll just say that from June to December, 150 to 200 pounds of produce were delivered weekly, including melons, corn, tomatoes, squash, potatoes, and greens. Our Master Gardener volunteers also picked apples from the orchard at East Farm and donated them to the Graduate Village from August through October, about 150 pounds of apples each week. They also delivered apples to the URI Health Services and to St. Augustine's for distribution at Rhodey Outpost. But I want to also mention that our faculty and staff are in fact working hard to advance food security across the state and the region by working with local food producers to improve yield, address disease and pest problems, and improve production practices, including for food safety. Really focusing on food crops and food animals, including aquacultured species. And as you've also it's been touched on, they also work with community groups like Southside Community Land Trust to strengthen food security in more urban areas where some of Rhode Island's immigrant populations reside. And it's really important to note that our faculty and staff teach and mentor students in this work to help create the next generation of food producers and agricultural experts. President Dooley mentioned our food system related academic programs in his comments.
Debbie, thank you so much, and thank you for your time this morning. I feel like we could have hours just talking about so much of the work that the college is doing, particularly your college and your experiences. I thank you so much for your time this morning, and I know throughout today we're going to continue to learn even more about what we can do to fight food insecurity. Next up, we have Miss Kelly Kidd. Miss Kidd is a nutrition specialist with our URI Athletics. If you think about food as fuel and the role that food plays in keeping our athletes healthy, keeping any of us healthy, whether you work out at home or you're a Division I athlete. Kelly, tell us a little about your role at URI and tell us about you.
I'm so happy to be here. So I am the URI nutrition specialist. So absolutely 1 day a week, I am solely responsible for the athletes on campus. And 3 days a week, I am responsible for the nutrition counseling for all of our students, to include grad students. So it is definitely a role that keeps me busy. Part of this role with nutrition counseling is to obtain nutrition assessment information and create an individualized nutrition plan based on the needs of whomever I'm working with. And that includes preferences, schedule, and a question that I'm automatically asking is food availability and access to food. So with that information, I put together an individualized nutrition plan. In some cases, that includes utilizing the Rhody outpost and the foods available there. So in some cases, I put together athlete plans based on the food that they have access to.
Kelly, real quick, I know it's hard for people to imagine, but we have Division I athletes on campus who are hungry. The large assumption that Division I athletes, full scholarships, but we have football players who are hungry. So tell us a little bit about the nutrition strategies that you use to assist our students and student athletes in finding food availability.
Absolutely. So because they have such large calorie needs, what I'll do is try to brainstorm different ideas of calorically dense foods that are available in our food pantry. So examples would be that we'll put together things like oatmeal with peanut butter, and if they can incorporate some dry milk powder, or tapping into some of the protein options that Dr. Tisdale mentioned that they are getting, like the tuna, which is really beneficial. So just trying to be creative with what is available.
Do you have any practical tools, resources that we could quickly share with our attendees today in regards to how to optimize food availability?
Absolutely. So some of the resources that I use are the USDA's cooking and shopping on a tight budget, their information. I have a digital cookbook that I'll access, a good and cheap eating on $4 a day, that I try to share with the folks that I work with. And then, we've had the great opportunity to partner with the URI Master Gardeners and Sharon Pavignano with the crops that are available, and we set up some free farmers markets in the fall and the summer. So those are some things that we have done with the access here on campus. And then looking ahead, I hope to put together a garden for our athletes that we hope to call the Victory Garden, so they can grow their own options right there. People are looking to help with donations. I think Dr. Tisdale's office and Safi do a wonderful job of kind of assessing the needs that are there. So quality protein sources, I think, are a constant challenge that I'm trying to incorporate into the nutrition plans that I'm creating.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you to all of our panelists today for everything that you're doing. I, in my role at URI, I don't know what we would do without you. I don't know what our students would do without you. Food insecurity is real. It's real on college campuses, and it's real certainly at URI. And we work every day to make a difference. I hate that we have to provide so many of these resources. I wish we didn't have to, but together we can work on food insecurity. So maybe we don't have to continue to do so many of these resources. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you to the panelists and the program today for this opportunity to talk about food insecurity on just one college campus. Again, we encourage you in your local area, contact the local college, contact URI. We'd love to have your assistance in regards to how do we assist in terms of food insecurity. At this time, I think we have time for Catherine, I'm going to go to you. Next, we're going to transition, but thank you for this opportunity today to talk about this important topic.
Wow, thank you, Kathy, so much. And Jackie, Pierre, Debbie, Kelly, you all are amazing resources for our students and for all of us on campus. As a reminder, we are taking questions for our speakers today via the Harrington School Media Communications and Media Facebook and YouTube pages. We did not have time for questions for this particular panel, but as I said, We will answer all those questions and put them on our website following this summit. And don't forget to post on social media by using the hashtag RIFoodSummit21. We're going to take another quick 5-minute break. I'm going to stick to this time so everyone can quickly stretch their legs, refill their coffee, get some water. We'll be back at 10:40 exactly to hear from Allison Tovar, our assistant professor of and director of community nutrition at URI, along with her graduate student. They've done some very interesting work at the state level, and I think you'll find it compelling. During this break, please enjoy the video of URI's Peckham Farm. There's some really cute animals in it. Take it away.
My name is Justine Deming. I'm a lecturer here at the University of Rhode Island in the Fisheries, Animal, and Veterinary Science Department. I teach animal management livestock courses here at URI, and today we're going to be walking around Peckham Farm. URI is at an advantage, I think, having a little bit of everything here on the farm. Here, the students will have lots of opportunity to interact and learn how to work with lots of different species. So Peckham Farm is basically, it's a tool for our department to use to help teach the students hands-on animal management techniques, basic animal husbandry. We have a lot of students that are interested in potentially going to veterinary school, so this gets them a chance to work with different types of livestock before they would want to do that. We've got chickens, sheep and lambs, beef cows and calves, goats and kids, and pigs and piglets. So at the farm we've got pastured poultry, so that gives us the opportunity to move the chickens around within the safety of their coop, and the chickens will go and they'll eat parasites or bugs and a bit of grass, and then we keep moving the coop as the chickens graze down those areas, and then also their droppings are going to be fertilizing the field as they go too, so it kind of has a multi-purpose for why we have them out there. Our cows are outside. We utilize rotational grazing for the pastures. We've got quite a few acres for the cows and the sheep to be grazing. So students would also be coming down to the farm for different animal science related clubs. So we have an animal and veterinary science club, and we also have a club that's more of an animal science competition with other universities in the Northeast. We do time a lot of the animal births with the spring semester so that students get to experience all of the baby animals here at the farm. URI initially was founded as a land-grant university, which has agriculture roots, and we're keeping that tradition alive with a thriving animal science program here at URI.
Thanks, everyone. We'll be right back at 10:35 for our next speakers. 10:35. Welcome back, everyone. We hope you enjoyed that video of URI's Peckham Farm. I think those piglets and lambs are so cute. This spring semester is especially exciting at the university with the birth of lots of new little farm babies. So stay tuned, come visit. It's amazing. Next, I would like to introduce Allison Tovar, Dr. Allison Tovar, and Fatima Tovar Santamaria. Dr. Tovar is an associate professor in URI's Nutrition and Food Science program, and Fatima is an undergrad alumna and a graduate student working in the SNAP Ed program at URI. They will be presenting their work on the impact of COVID-19 on food access in Rhode Island. Welcome, Allison and Fatima.
Thank you so much for that introduction. We're really excited to be here and to share some preliminary work related to the impact of COVID-19 on food access in Rhode Island. Next slide. If we can put up the slides, great. If we can go to the next slide. Great. Many of you know Dr. Sarah Mean, the Director of Community Nutrition Education at URI, who is the one leading this project. I am stepping in for her today as she delivered a healthy baby boy a bit earlier than expected last week. So as you heard, I'm an associate professor here at URI at the Department of Nutrition and Food Sciences, and I lead the Healthy Feeding, Healthy Eating Lab, whose goal is to understand factors that shape eating behaviors early in life in order to inform community-based interventions among diverse, underrepresented populations. So I'm just going to let Fatima introduce herself really quickly.
Very delighted to be here today. My name is Fatima Tobar. I am a URI alumni working in the SNAP-Ed Nutrition Education Office and as a graduate student on the project.
Great, next slide. If we could just advance to the next slide. Thank you. As we are all aware, oh, sorry, can you stay on the previous slide? Too fast. As you are all aware, beginning in March 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic led to disruptions in domestic, international food systems and supply chains. In the US, restaurants closed doors, grocery stores struggled to maintain stocked shelves, children no longer had access to regular in-school meals. Additionally, job disruptions led to economic instability for many households, causing a rise in food insecurity, defined as having limited or inconsistent access to nutritious and affordable food. Pre-pandemic data reflect the lowest food insecurity rates in more than 20 years, but the current crisis has reversed improvements made over the past decade since the Great Recession. Next slide. As you have already, next slide. Oh, I guess it's a bit delayed. As you have already heard so many times here today, in Rhode Island, we have seen similar increases with 25.2% of households being classified as food insecure in 2020. These are, again, the highest rates we have seen in 20 years, and we know that these are exacerbated in racially and ethnically diverse audiences where health disparities are even more pressing. Next slide. Given the unique and challenging times, Dr. Amin, together with other researchers, including myself, decided to conduct a qualitative study to capture the voices of key stakeholders from the community to assess the impact that COVID-19 was having on food access in the state of Rhode Island. This study was conducted from September to November 2020 and comprised of key informant interviews with 25 Rhode Island local and state stakeholders. Today, we are going to present some preliminary results related to some of the organizational successes and challenges experienced by these stakeholders. Next slide. Before we get into sharing some of the results, we wanted to share some of our methodology. First, our team met to discuss the questions that we wanted to prioritize given the current situation and be able to help us understand the impact that COVID-19 was having on food access in Rhode Island. We drafted a set of questions as a team, but also looked to what others nationally were collecting and utilized relevant questions. We broke up our interview guide into 3 sections: scope of work, organizational successes and challenges, and impact on the health disparities, with a total of 9 questions. In order to identify the key stakeholders, we first generated a list of 35 community partners that were mostly involved with the Rhode Island Food Access Working Group. We also had a question at the end of the interview asking if we should talk to anybody else that they thought was an important stakeholder. We sent an email invitation to each of the stakeholders, inviting them to participate, and all interviews were conducted via Zoom. And prior to the interview, we shared the interview guide questions with each of the stakeholders. All participants verbally consented to the interview and the recording of the interview. All audio files were then sent to be professionally transcribed and were de-identified. And in order to analyze our data, we first created a code book with a priori codes and used this to guide our analysis. 4 researchers from our team then coded each of these transcripts into a qualitative software called NVivo, and there were ongoing discussions throughout the process, and any codes that emerged as we were coding the data, the transcripts we then added to our code book. Given the large amount of data that we have, this is an ongoing process. Next slide.
Let's take a closer look at the results of the interviews. As previously mentioned, recruitment for participation took place via email correspondence, and we reached out to a total of 35 community partners and heard back from 25. Being mindful that this was an incredibly busy time for everyone, the interview was designed to be 30 to 40 minutes long. During the interview, I would ask about their organization's experience with addressing food access during COVID-19 regarding their daily operations, impact on health disparities, and overall successes and challenges encountered along the way. While the design of the interview was designed to be as efficient as possible, they often went over the intended time, as the Rhode Island community had an enthusiasm to share their experiences and humbly attribute their success in improving food access to the collaborative network in our state. They willingly shared areas of future improvement, acknowledging that while this is a difficult time, it also speaks volumes to the innovations developed to help community members now and hopefully into the future. Next slide. We aim to interview a broad variety of stakeholders to capture both state level and boots on the ground perspectives. As you can see, this table demonstrates the breakdown of these stakeholders. State agencies were interviewed the most at 28% of the interviews, followed by health equity zones and nonprofit organizations, both at 20%. State agencies provided a comprehensive umbrella view of how the state was reacting and what was being implemented in reaction to COVID-19. The Health Equity Zone is an initiative of the Rhode Island Department of Health, where a team of residents, business leaders, and other professionals in many other fields come together to address overall systemic factors that are preventing their communities from being as healthy as possible. Due to this existing infrastructure, these zones quickly responded during COVID-19, which made their reflection and boots on the ground perspective helpful in cultivating future improvement. Nonprofit organizations interviewed consisted of entities involved in food rescue, wellness committees, and increasing community access to local agriculture. Next slide. This map shows the different organization types interviewed throughout the state. These organizations focus more on their local community and include entities such as food pantries, HESs, nonprofit organizations, city agencies, and federally qualified health centers. As the map shows, we tried to have local representatives throughout the entire state. Next slide. Here is an overview of the demographic characteristics of interviewees. While we interviewed 25 community partners, there were 33 people interviewed, as some interviews had a few interviewees involved. The years of work experience for the interviewees ranged from less than 1 year to 33 years in their respective positions. Out of those interviewed, 82% identified as female, 82% identified as white, and 70% did not specify their ethnicity. Next slide.
Thank you, Fatima. So as expected, there were several organizational challenges that emerged from the data, and wanted to share some preliminary themes in addition to some of the challenges that emerged, and then go into further detail on the top 3 challenges, together with some quotes from our stakeholders representing each of the themes. Next slide. The top 3 challenges that came up were challenges related to food insecurity in the state. Second, having culturally relevant food and information. And finally, not having sufficient resources to meet the food demands of Rhode Islanders. Other challenges mentioned throughout our conversations included difficulties connecting with community members and distributing food assistance with COVID-19 social distancing guidelines, the financial implications many were going through, some for the very first time, so losing a job or having reduced hours, transportation barriers seen with residents who typically relied on public transportation were now afraid because of social distancing, and residents who didn't have their vehicles struggled with carpooling. Challenges around storage were described throughout as organizations were receiving mass quantities of food and donations and had to strategize on how to safely store or otherwise distribute immediately with the case of perishable items. And challenges surrounding the nutritional quality of the food assistance boxes. This was mostly in terms of the federal food assistance boxes, and also with donated food pantry items that were usually non-perishable, high in sodium, and didn't align with some of the nutrition preferences of clients. Next slide. So the most mentioned organizational challenge was food insecurity in the community. These struggles with food insecurity came up in several ways. The first was the disparities and inequalities that became even more apparent than they were prior to COVID-19. For example, a state agency stakeholder reported, "We know the zip codes that are going to be hard hit by this pandemic and its ripple effects. We knew Central Falls was going to be hard hit, and Central Falls is hard hit. We knew Pawtucket, areas of Providence. So for me, the crisis revealed the crisis. And unfortunately, it's our communities of color, it's our lower income communities, it's our homebound, it's the folks who were struggling before. And that's where my heart and my passion remains, to be honest with you." This quote highlights just how vulnerable certain populations were prior to COVID-19, and that when COVID hit, it just exacerbated the situation that much more. In another quote, we see that for immigrant families, especially those that were undocumented, had even more barriers to accessing food. And then certainly for our families that are undocumented, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And so I think you've seen a lot of effort throughout the state to put resources to families, especially just dollars to families who are undocumented or just aren't able to access state level or federal level food resources. Next slide. Another common struggle related to food insecurity that emerged was meeting the needs of populations who are food insecure for the first time. For example, a city agency stakeholder said, "I think a lot of people move into a food insecure space and never would have saw themselves as being that and don't always know how to access public resources. Oh, is this when I sign up for SNAP? What is SNAP? How does that work? Wait, I have a 3-year-old. I can sign up for WIC? I thought that was for people who had infants or newborns." There's a learning curve for people who have potential to enter food distribution programs or food access programs that wouldn't normally know how to do that. This quote not only emphasizes how hard it is to become food insecure, but also how confusing it can be, especially as it relates to federal food assistance programs and their guidance. In addition, another struggle that emerged was reaching high-risk populations during COVID-19. For example, a food pantry stakeholder said, "A lot of our clients might be in at the at-risk group and might not have felt safe and secure to come and collect food from us." So I think that probably significantly reduced their access to healthy food. Just fear or inability to leave the house or not having friends or family to come and act as proxy for them and collect their food for them. From this quote, there were clearly some significant challenges to getting food to vulnerable populations who were at risk, which included the elderly and those that were health compromised. Next slide. The second challenge which emerged was not being able to meet the cultural needs of several populations in our state. This is from a HES representative. "We have this organization that is doing meal deliveries and we support that, but keeping dietary health, cultural kind of preferences is really important because there will be people that are a food box donation and people will just throw the food out sometimes because it's not what they like. Food is very personal, and I think that is something that continues. It's a challenge to try to feed people, but also allow them to have options and opportunities to make their own decisions as well, which is, I think, a big challenge and something that we've seen come to the forefront too as well with this pandemic. While there were clearly several challenges to the USDA Farmers Family Food Box program that we are not discussing here today, this quote highlights the importance of cultural and personal food preferences and reminds us that just because people are food insecure, that does not mean that they do not have preferences, which should be respected. Next slide. In addition to the challenges related to cultural preferences, there were challenges with having appropriate language and communications. For example, a state agency shared services that are culturally relevant and reflective. And I don't just mean about food, but how we deliver services. I hope that we have made a meaningful impact there and we're much more intentional about really respecting and reflecting. So that's how we would deliver the services. That's in understanding our representation matters, and who we see as leaders is who we can be ourselves, and really understanding the very important need we have for diverse workforce and diverse leadership. So I hope that we can continue. I think we've made good progress. There, just talking about from state perspective, but there's so much more that we could do, and I hope that we can continue to do it. This quote underscores not just that food should be culturally appropriate, but how we deliver these services should also meet the needs of the populations we serve. It also suggests, as you will soon hear about, that there were so much progress that occurred during this crisis, but that we can continue to do more. and a nonprofit organization shared, and translation for communicating with all the different communities that are out shopping at farmers markets has been a huge challenge, especially with communicating COVID rules in a new language. Yeah, that's been a big challenge. Next slide. Finally, our last challenge related to insufficient resources, particularly is it related to time, preparation, and required organizational resources for providing food. For example, a city agency member stated, "We are a primarily grant-funded office, which means that we have deliverables that we have to funders. And so during, especially the height of the pandemic, we had to maintain all those commitments to our funders. At the same time, we were being asked to manage food distribution. So we were essentially working 2 or 3 jobs in a day. I would say we were putting 15 to 20-hour work days. We didn't sleep, we just kept going. And that meant that we were out in the field doing work. So we had to maintain our own personal protection. We were setting up food distribution sites, communicating, doing a lot of back-end spreadsheet work, and trying to keep track of where food is going and who needs what. It was extremely challenging." This quote shows us just how overwhelmed the people who were ensuring food to those that needed it the most were. And they didn't really have a choice. They were dealing with a complex issue with little resources and putting their own lives at stake. Furthermore, there were clear constraints on state budgets and general lack of funding, a state agency member shared. "I think the challenge is still the financial support that we want to achieve and are not yet able to achieve just because of constraints on the state budget and lack of sufficient stimulus funding to do the type of work we want to. We know that through the work that we've done, where the needs are, and when they can't be supplied via a federal grant program. We are constrained in our ability to do so, and frankly, that is frustrating." Next slide.
Thank you, Allison. Now I'd like to move on to the successes experienced across the state. Next slide. During the interviews, agencies reflected on the value of residing in a small state where collaboration, communication, and innovation all play integral roles in improving food access. And the preliminary analysis shows that, in fact, these 3 factors emerged as the largest successes during the initial stages of the pandemic, both at local and state level. Other contributing factors in success observed relate to the use of technology and social media, funding opportunities, having a boots-on-the-ground presence with community members, transportation strategies, and culturally relevant initiatives. Next slide. The first success I'll be talking about today is enhanced collaboration that was demonstrated throughout the state. In one city, we heard, "So we were working hard to bring in large amounts of food to locations within a neighborhood, and then having organizations come and pick up from that location. So then what you needed is people with cars or vans who could come and pick up a large amount of food and turn it around and distribute it. We were taking every single city vehicle that we could and turning it into a food delivery system for kids." What this quote highlights is city office collaborating with city vehicles to transform them into a food delivery system, coordinate distribution dates with local organizations, and offer guidance to streamline efforts. They also saw success in identifying a centralized location in the city, which allowed for safe social distancing and distributed a high volume of meals, including consulting appropriate donations that made sense for their distribution mechanisms. In the second quote, the state agency attributes their state success to the collaborative work from the Food Strategy Task Force. We had a big group coming together talking about what is everybody doing and how do we better coordinate all of these various services. Rhode Island is small, and then communities are smaller, and then people doing food work is smaller. We all came together to do a lot of this work in collaboration together. I talked about surging emergency foods, which we did, pursuing the federal waivers, which we did, creating the new programs. In this scenario, the group included key stakeholders and community partners participating on a weekly call to strategize how to surge existing distribution programs, increase resources to maximize efforts, troubleshoot and plan for solutions. Through these collaborative efforts, they were able to address gaps in the system that would build for short-term, but most importantly, long-term success. Next slide. In my last quote for enhanced collaboration, this home delivery meal program was very proud to share collaborative efforts to support local businesses in their city, all while improving food security among their recipients. They explained to us how they hired caterers who had lost their business due to COVID-19. Here they stated, "So we're paying for the food. One of them got PPP money, but had nothing for his staff to do. So he wanted to keep his staff employed. They purchased the food through our grant money and made healthy to-go meals that we froze and gave out in our food pantry. So we're paying for the food costs, they're paying for the staffing with their PPP money, and people are getting healthy food." This is a strong example of successes that we heard throughout the interviews. Next slide. Now we'll be sharing a couple new initiatives that occurred throughout the state during this time. A member of the HES recognized the importance of supporting local community partners. This partner shares, "We created a grocery certificate program. We started working with a nonprofit organization and reached out to the Spanish-speaking community, which there is a large, quite invisible sometimes, Spanish-speaking community in the city. We now have a person who staffs the market who is fluent in Spanish, and through the HES and the nonprofit, we've been identifying households that are really in need, because I think many were in need before COVID-19, but times are even harder now. So we've been distributing $50 worth of certificates that people can spend at the market. And then we have somebody, Spanish is our first language, on site who can guide these new shoppers through understanding how to use the certificates. Now, these efforts emphasize the importance of client autonomy and decrease food waste if food assistance is foreign or not part of their cultural or dietary lifestyle. Next, a nonprofit organization shares, "A lot of times, some of the emergency foods are not therapeutic for them. They're not supporting their health and their health needs. So an accountable care organization put out an RFP for them to begin to start looking at social determinants of health and working with community-based organizations. They had funds available, and we responded to that. There was a program that we had proposed, and they had another respondent, which was actually the clinic that we work with. So the accountable care organization said, why don't you all connect and just work together? You have the clinic, you have the food, and you propose the same thing. So we're working with the clinic and their pediatric patient families, and our farmers are growing the food and getting it out to them. This organization's actions exemplify the importance of supporting local families' health by connecting them with fresh produce from local farms to improve food security. Next slide. The quarantine, isolation, and the stay-at-home orders really magnified the challenges of food access for SNAP recipients, as seen in this example. We were really excited to implement that and get some online purchasing and delivery going through that waiver. And some were totally new programs. We implemented the Pandemic EBT program, which provided families the value of missed school meals. So while it feels uncomfortable to talk about silver linings coming from a pandemic, we made tremendous progress to meet the needs of folks in the time of urgency that will have ongoing long-term benefits for SNAP recipients for years to come. Like the partnerships with farmers and additional places being able to do delivery, the additional ways that people can access our programs are extraordinary. This successful experience by a state agency helped mitigate COVID-19 barriers that Rhode Islanders were currently facing. Next slide. The last success I'll be talking about today is effective communication. This was critical throughout the state and among local organizations. One nonprofit shares, thank God for all the social media, because I can put something up on Facebook and get answers. I went live and said, look, I really want to help you in this city. I don't know what you people want to eat. You're very different. You're not like the Cape Verdeans in this city. You're more mainstream. It's about having the willingness to ask that question and not come across offensive. I want to know what you like. I want to treat you with empathy, and I want to serve you where you live. Now, this response reflects an important part of food rescue, which is delivering culturally relevant food. And the only way to ensure you are doing that appropriately is by taking the time to understand what it is that community members need. This organization utilized social media platforms to better connect with their recipients and engage in conversation on what kind of food they were looking for. They also utilized social media to identify areas in the state that needed their assistance based on requests submitted. In the next quote, This Health Equity Zone Collaborative reached community members and communicated relevant information through various online platforms. They stated, "We have something called a community planning platform, which is a website in which various members of the community can open a page to reach the group they're working with. We had one that we labeled COVID resources. We put on there everything we could about resources like who delivers food, where you can get takeout, and how all those things work." This organization's team would often communicate about updated hours of operation for local grocery stores who were offering curbside pickup or delivery, restaurants participating in takeout services, and they also communicated a cooking preparation tips video via their community YouTube page, which matched the ingredients in the food boxes that were being delivered to their families. Next slide. During the pandemic, there was an increased awareness of what was being communicated to community members in terms of optimizing what they could from available benefits and waivers, including where to access food distribution sites, updates on unemployment benefits, or even childcare in the state. This city agency shares, "Our comms team, internally, we were translating things as quickly as we could into Spanish, trying to visualize information too, for people who have a low literacy or just receive information better visually, and trying to get that out to community partners. We were on the radio, we were using our social media. The mayor put out a daily newsletter about COVID-19. Communicating state-level information is really hard, and communicating that out to residents. And so because this city has the largest number of people who could potentially benefit from that information and those benefits, it was really important that we were making sure our residents knew about these opportunities. The content development was really intense. Now, a priority for this agency was understanding the value of quickly and effectively disseminating this information to an underserved community through an equitable response, where non-English speakers could also access updates and relevant information, including those with low literacy. Now I will be passing it back to Allison. Next slide.
Thank you so much, Fatima. So clearly there were many organizational challenges that arose, specifically those related to food insecurity, cultural relevance, and lack of overall resources. But there were also many success stories, including the enhanced collaborations, new initiatives, and communication. We believe that these challenges and successes can help inform future food access efforts during time of emergency and beyond. For example, ensuring that there's a coordinated response through strategic leadership that has a focus on vulnerable populations. Second, further thinking about ways in which we can create sustainable systems to reach high-risk populations and address the cultural food needs of the different groups in our state. Third, we should continue to foster these new and innovative initiatives while keeping open lines of communication, not only during COVID, but taking these as lessons for the future to help improve the food security of our state. While we are still in the process of analyzing this data, we did want to share with you some thoughts on what stakeholders believe would be important in terms of next steps in our state. The first one is reinforcing the need to replace the state-level strategic food position that could have helped coordinate an appropriate emergency plan for COVID-19. Secondly, there were some concerns that leaders involved in a heavy decision-making often lack a boots-on-the-ground perspective, and that we should increase efforts to promote inclusion from smaller agencies, especially those from culturally diverse backgrounds, that better represent the voices and concerns of the community members we serve. Finally, there were suggestions to improve the efforts to better support our state local food systems to ensure the farmers have more of an integral role in our local economy, especially as they're struggling to find buyers for crops. Finally, we just want to share our next steps, which will be to finalize the analysis and share the results in a report, in a final public-facing report. We want to acknowledge that these findings are just a snapshot of the bigger picture, and that, of course, many of the results and findings will need to be contextualized within the larger federal response that occurred during COVID-19. We hope that our findings, together with those from our state entities, including the work from the Rhode Island Food Policy Council has done, will help inform future efforts to improve food access in the state. Next slide. We just wanted to finalize by taking the time to thank all of the stakeholders that participated in this study and took time out of their very busy schedules and provided us with such rich information. While we don't have time for questions today, we would be happy to respond to any questions via email. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Allison and Fatima. That was an amazing presentation, and the data and the work behind the data, I think, will inform our stakeholders and our policymakers for a long time. As a reminder, please feel free to ask questions of our speakers by accessing the Facebook and YouTube pages. We haven't, in this particular case, we did not have time, but we will be pulling any questions that we see from the audience and put them on our website to get you answers, or you can ask the questions directly. And don't forget, when you post about the summit on social media, to use the hashtag RIFoodSummit21. We are again going to take a short 5-minute break so everyone can refill on coffee, water, stretch your legs. We'll be back at 11:10 exactly to hear from state leaders about how they are addressing the growing food security crisis in Rhode Island. During the break, please enjoy this video of URI's other farm, the East Farm.
My name is Stephen Alm. I'm a professor of entomology here at the University of Rhode Island. This is East Farm. It's just less than a mile from campus. It's primarily fruit research. And so we have apples, pears, peaches, grapes, blackberries, blueberries, and we do research on the insects, pollinators, fruit culture, grafting, pruning, a lot of different things. Bees are incredibly important for pollination of 87% of all flowering crops. And it's been said that 1 out of every 3 bites of food you take is pollinated by a bee. We have one master's student that's working on the bumblebees of Rhode Island. And we've noticed that there used to be 11 species of bumblebees in Rhode Island. Since 2014, we've only been able to find 6 of those. So we're trying to find the forage plants that they need to survive and the habitats they need to survive, because they're very important pollinators. They fly at lower temperatures than the honeybees, and so they'll pollinate some of the early crops such as blueberries and apples. Because we don't need these apples for East Farm, most of it goes to the food banks, and that's where the master gardeners again do a tremendous job of helping us grow these apples and other fruit crops and get them to the various people in need, Grad Village and so on. Just learning new things is the best, and then teaching it to the students and having them make new discoveries too, the graduate students and the undergrads. That's a very satisfying aspect of the position.
We will be right back at 11:10 for our final panel of the Rhode Island Food System Summit. you enjoyed that video of URI's East Farm. As you can imagine, East Farm and the agronomy farm are very meaningful to the food insecure students on our campus. People can go pick apples. They can access some of the produce that comes out of the agronomy farm. It's an amazing resource for our students. Also, a huge thank you to Sky Sabin Productions, who put together those farm videos for us today. They were truly beautiful. Next, I would like to introduce Carol Hall Walker. Carol is the Associate Director for the Division of Community Health and Equity at the Rhode Island Department of Health. She's been an amazing partner, and she's been with the department for what will be 30 years in August. Carol leads the Department of Health's efforts to coordinate public health education and safety, and she's responsible for overseeing the Rhode Island Health Equity Zones. Carol also is a proud graduate of URI. Carol will be moderating a discussion on how state government is addressing the growing food security issues as a result of COVID-19. Welcome, Carol.
Well, good morning and thank you. Greetings on behalf of Dr. Alexander Scott, the Director of the Rhode Island Department of Health, and also on behalf of the Rhode Island Food Nutrition Policy Advisory Council, known as IFNPAC. The council is charged with determining solutions to policy and regulatory barriers to the growth of a strong, sustainable food economy and healthful nutrition practices. The council consists of the director or designee of the Department of Health, the Department of Environmental Management, the Department of Administration, the Department of Elderly Affairs or Office of Healthy Aging, the Rhode Island Department of Education, and Commerce Rhode Island. Special thanks to Lauren Conkey, Erin Bertoldi, and Ann Barone, and other colleagues at the department for their support in helping to keep this council engaged. A big thank you to the University of Rhode Island, my alma mater, Catherine Flynn, Sharon Paviano, my new superhero, and Katie McQuinn and Leah Cooper. This panel discussion is on how state government is addressing the growing food security issues of COVID-19. A few data points, some you heard earlier, but I want to acknowledge and thank the Rhode Island Community Food Bank 2020 status report on hunger in Rhode Island and CDC for this important data. As a result of the pandemic, representing the highest level of food insecurity recorded in Rhode Island in 20 years, 1 in 4 households lack adequate food, as well as 25% of households are worried about having adequate food in 2020. But we're also seeing increases in high blood pressure. We're seeing increases in prediabetes, diabetes, and other chronic conditions. Black and Latinx communities in Rhode Island had more cases and hospitalizations from COVID-19 and have been harder hit in terms of food insecurity. 36% of Black households and 40% of Latinx households are food insecure, as compared to 21% of white households. According to the same report, SNAP benefits rose by 35%, and CARES Act funding has helped to expand these benefits to low-income households. Also, Rhode Island obesity rates are going in the wrong direction for adults, children, and especially communities of color. The Department of Health has worked with all of the excellent panelists you will hear from now, in addition to the Rhode Island Food Policy Council, Health Equity Zones, local farmers, and so many more. We will have a round-robin discussion, highlight some of the great work underway. We will address audience questions if time allows. So we'll begin with Maria Samini, Associate Director of Policy Analysis, Research, and Development at the Rhode Island Department of Human Services. If you'd like to say a few words about yourself, Maria, beyond that, please do, and welcome.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you to everyone at URI who put this together and all of you who are participating this morning on Inauguration Day. As Carol said, my name is Maria Samini. I am the Associate Director of Policy at the Rhode Island Department of Human Services. And the Rhode Island Department of Human Services administers public benefits to low-income Rhode Islanders. They include health coverage, cash assistance, childcare assistance, and SNAP, which Carol just referenced. As you've probably heard, SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, is formerly known as the Food Stamp Program. And as it's our federal partner, USDA says, it's the first line of defense against hunger in our nation. What we do at DHS is to determine eligibility for SNAP. So we accept applications from families and individuals who need additional assistance to buy food. When we determine whether or not they can be eligible for that program and issue those benefits monthly. So at a high level, right now in Rhode Island, there are about 140,000 individuals receiving SNAP benefits. 32% of those are children, about 21% seniors, and about 36% of those individuals have some type of disability. And we're serving about 85,000 households throughout the state with SNAP benefits. As the Associate Director of Policy, I oversee a lot of the rules of all of the programs at DHS, but I'm particularly focused often on issues of hunger, in part because of my just over a decade working at the University of Rhode Island through DHS's 20-year partnership with the Feinstein Center for a Hunger-Free America at the University of Rhode Island. Through COVID, we've experienced a lot of challenges with food security, and those have highlighted some of the existing barriers for SNAP recipients, as well as prompted incredible collaborations and innovations with other state agencies and community partners. So I thought I'd take a moment and give a high-level overview of some of those things, unless, Carol, you had a specific question to ask.
Sure. Thank you for that, Maria. Would you tell us a little bit about how you have addressed food insecurity in the state, and what issues has your agency, seen and that you're working towards fixing?
Certainly. I mean, primarily, as I said, we're charged with administering this federal program, but at the same time, COVID has, as I mentioned, magnified a lot of access issues. So we've done incredible work as a department to, for instance, make sure that people would be able to access food without going into a store. Historically, SNAP has required a customer to swipe their card at a store, and with approval from our federal partners, we were able to relatively quickly institute online purchasing and delivery for SNAP recipients, which had not been available to our state previously. So now SNAP recipients who may be homebound or just are not leaving because of COVID precautions can purchase their food through Amazon, certain Walmarts, and recently Aldi grocery stores in order to have that food delivered. And we've also worked with several community agencies who have taken the initiative to do some shopping for their homebound community partners. I'll also add that we have another partnership with URI. URI holds the contract for the SNAP Nutrition Ed program, and they've done tremendous work creating some materials about how to be smart shoppers with this new functionality of being able to purchase food with SNAP benefits online.
Excellent, excellent examples. How is your agency addressing racial and ethnic disparities as a result of the pandemic, Maria?
So other partners at DHS, some of my colleagues participate in the Equity Council through the state office, through the governor. But we also are ensuring that all of our materials are always available in Spanish and Portuguese, and working with several agencies in our community that serve specific demographic populations to ensure that we're making sure that they have access to all of the new materials created in response to SNAP and COVID. So for instance, the Center for Southeast Asians and Progressive Latino are organizations that we ensure that we distribute information through.
Thank you so much, Maria. Hopefully we'll have more time to come back to you towards the end. Let's turn to Ken Ayers. He is the Chief of the Division of Agriculture, the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. And if you'd like to say a few more words, Ken, about the many roles that you play, please do.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I am Chief of Agriculture for the state. I keep my mind on how we can support our farmers and fishers in Rhode Island. We have an incredibly strong commercial seafood sector. and they are just as important to the food system as land-based agriculture is. And during COVID, largely pivoted most of my efforts to helping out with the many colleagues that have been talked about so far to address food insecurity in Rhode Island. I want to talk a little bit about three things: coordination within state government, the role of community-based organizations, and seafood. If there's any one theme to the state's response, it is coordination, collaboration, synergy. If you look up the definition of synergy, it's the combined effect of different parts of an organization being greater than the sum of their whole. That's what this is really all about. In my job as chief of agriculture, I constantly think about the food ecosystem, all the many parts of it, and support that in good and bad times, because ultimately when you respond to a crisis like this, you want to respond as a system. The system needs to be constantly taken care of, massaged, and managed so that it's ready to deal with issues like this. So really, I think we exemplified this in Rhode Island as having a strong, already vibrant food ecosystem as a result of years of effort, not just state agencies, but nonprofits, and many parts of that. And really that's the most important part of this, that when you have a strong working relationship with people, relationships within and between parts of the food system, you can respond so much quicker and so much faster and adapt quicker to the shocks that we experience and will experience going forward. That's really lesson one in all this. So techniques are, for example, that we employed in Rhode Island. We began with weekly phone calls among state agencies that I and many other parts of the state government participated in. We expanded those phone calls to include all the community-based organizations that were interested in joining, NGOs and whatnot. It just wasn't state agency call. We did those weekly first, then 3 times a week, and now weekly, actually bi-weekly now. I led them for a period of time. The Department of Health leads them now. Those phone calls continue, and they will continue as long as is necessary. It's a chance to talk amongst people and between people to make sure that we are as coordinated as possible. Really critical communication and relationships. We learned also the role of community-based organizations. We often think about delivering food through the major state and federal programs, SNAP, WIC, Department of Education, et cetera. But often the boots on the ground are very, very locally based organizations, and they are such a critical part of the food system. That was really something that came out to us all. And also the challenge of supporting them. Boots on the ground who are finding out and encountering the very things that we need to get feedback about constantly. And having that constant means of communication allows not just us to talk to them, but them to talk to us. And we learned about the importance of things like cold storage, the challenge of staffing those organizations, transportation issues, culturally appropriate food, et cetera. So we highlighted to us during the entire response was the role of community-based organizations. And third, all the parts of the food system. Sometimes we don't think about seafood, right, in a coastal state as being how as important as it needs to be to food. The reality is when you think about seafood, and this is true in the country, most of what we consume is imported, most of what we catch is exported. Seafood needs to be just an important part of the food system and pandemic response as anything else. Mm-hmm. And so we're working on that, but we need to keep working to make sure that every single part of the food system, we maximize every single part of the food system when we're in a response. And in general, those are the type of things that you work on all times of the year and all times of parts of the economy working bad or good, so that they can work for you when you need to. Techniques that we employed in that regard, for example, with DEM, are to pass an emergency regulation to allow our fishers to sell directly off the boat, directly to consumers. That's unusual. Usually there's layers that they have to go through to get to the end consumer. We passed an emergency regulation to allow that to happen. We're engaged in a lot to support the ports on a long-term basis. Did a lot of work with organizations like the Food Policy Council to get underutilized fish species into inner and urban city communities where there's more of an affinity for those type of fish species that we've talked about, and various techniques to make sure that seafood is no different than land-based agriculture to be part of addressing the pandemic response and to building out a healthy food system.
Thank you so much, Ken. Often we forget about those fantastic resources, natural resources that Rhode Island has. And so we're very proud of the work that you're doing and that DEM is doing overall, both with CBOs and other state agencies. You've been a great champion. Thank you so much. So let's turn now to Nell Abernathy, Policy Director, Office of Governor Gina Raimondo. And would you like to share a little bit about your role, Nell, and then talk further about what your office has been doing around food insecurity? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you everyone at URI and everyone watching today and participating in this important event. My role as Policy Director in the Governor's Office covers a wide range of issues, but specifically, beginning in June, I was asked to take a look at our response to food insecurity and identify where things were working well and where there were some gaps. And I worked with many of the people on this call who had been, since March, spending 3 months doing the hard work of pivoting in this crisis. And we formed a working group within the state to coordinate both internally and also externally with a number of community-based organizations to gather that feedback. Again, what in the response was going well, but where were there still gaps, and in many cases, long-term gaps that needed to be addressed. So I'll say the first thing that was very clear, and it's been said a few times already, is that the Rhode Island food community proved remarkably resilient and strong during the pandemic. And that was both coordination at the state level and the city level, but also really the community, a range of community groups stepping up, pivoting their mission, collaborating to meet the different kinds of challenges we were facing. But then, as I mentioned, the crisis also revealed some longer-term gaps in the food ecosystem. Maria mentioned delivery and Ken mentioned cold storage. And I will say the logistics around getting food to individuals, whether it was SNAP recipients or individuals who relied on food pantries, or just individuals and households who struggle long-term with issues of access to transportation and food deserts. That was front and center. And then another issue that we saw as a long-term gap, exacerbated by the COVID crisis, was reaching some harder to reach populations that aren't part of the pantry system. Immigrant communities in particular were not as connected to the food pantry system as other traditional food emergency programs, and many were not eligible for state and federal aid. And, there were a range of other gaps we identified around culturally appropriate foods, availability of hot meals. All of these, I think we've moved towards longer term solutions that I'm happy to share about. Carol, if you'd like me to talk about that, or if you want me to go into another topic.
No, please proceed, Nell.
Great, absolutely. So Maria talked a little bit about some of the innovation on delivery for SNAP recipients. There are a range of other pilots that we're pursuing. The HEZ community groups, Health Equity Zone community groups, really stepped up to do delivery within those communities. We established a program with the Elijah Project to deliver food boxes to individuals who are in quarantine and isolation and truly cannot leave their homes. And that speaks to, I think, the success in delivery of the HEZ and some of the community-based groups speaks to also some of the solutions we found for reaching harder to reach populations. I will say the Rhode Island Community Food Bank did a fantastic job from the beginning partnering with community groups and faith groups to get food to populations who weren't traditionally serving. But also, as Ken pointed out, we saw the need to invest more in the hyper-local organizations run by people who represent the communities that they serve. And I think one positive thing that has come out of COVID is certainly for state funding, but also for some of our other funding partners, we have diversified the groups we're supporting and the leadership we're investing in on the food assistance level. And I think that's a huge win that will be long lasting. And then also I should say, Director Rose Jones of the Office of Healthy Aging has really from the beginning done a remarkable job emphasizing, along with many community partners, the need to be providing people with culturally appropriate foods. And that has been integrated across a number of different programs.
Thank you so much, Nell. We really appreciate your emphasis on the culturally appropriate meals. We've heard that over and over again. We know our health equity zones have also heard that, and we're grateful to the Office of Healthy Aging and all the boots on the ground work that they've been doing and continue to do. So let's turn now to Ellen Sinar from the Healthy Communities Office Director. She's with the City of Providence out of Mayor Elorza's office. Welcome, Ellen. Please share with us some of the amplifications of state activities, some of the children's school programs that I know you've been engaged with, and also some of the support for non-food bank organizations and food bank access. And if you'd like to say a word or two about yourself first, please do.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, URI. And it is an honor to be on a panel with people who I greatly respect in the food systems world. So my name is Ellen Sinar. I am the director of the City of Providence's Healthy Communities Office. We lead the city's health policy and promotion activities under Mayor Jorge Elorza. So for the beginning of our food pandemic response, it really started with Mayor Elorza signing an executive order that activated the city's emergency operations. And that in that response, it designated the Healthy Communities Office to lead the city's food response work. So back in March, every morning at 8:30, I was on a call with colleagues in the City of Providence, and food was on our agenda. And so what's important about that is that the city a few years ago had made a really important investment in planning for emergency food response, particularly for children during inclement weather. So we all know that school meals are very important for students. When school is out or canceled, many of our students don't have access to the important meals that they need. So we had already integrated a lot of our food response work into our emergency systems. So we were really ready to go and pivot our school meal programs, both in school and out of school time. So the City of Providence serves free dinners to youth in out of school settings. We were able to shift those quickly. It's never easy. I'm not saying that this was an easy process, but we had the system ready to shift to multi-day take-home meals. So a huge thanks to the school department, to our parks department, rec department, and Sodexo for making that work. So the City of Providence wound up really doing deep engagement with community-based organizations who are serving people in Providence. They have a direct line to us. They have a direct line to the mayor. We engage with them on a variety of other levels, not just food. And so we were starting to get lots and lots of requests for food, for information about food. And so the city really served as a connector for that information and also for food as we started to get donations. So moving to donations, there were many food systems already being activated at the state level, but at the same time, we were getting offers of really significant donations. And so what the city wound up doing, the City of Providence, is really leading and coordinating the distribution of donations in a socially distanced and safe way. So we were not only setting up those donation systems, setting up people to come and pick up the donations, Toward the end, we actually wound up advising other groups and other communities about how to set up those systems as well. And so I'm going to I have to take this time to thank so many of the entities who served as donors in this process. URI, thank you. Gotham Greens, Snap Chef, Brown, Farm Fresh, Rhode Island Food Bank, Share Our Strength, Meals on Wheels, Sodexo Urban Greens. These are all entities that offered up food donations, and we were able to work very closely with them. I have stood in many rainy, cold, hot parking lots with all of you. That's sort of the boots on the ground commitment that you all made. So I just want to give a plug for all of the work that other folks have done too. Another place where the city stood in was really advocating through our municipal networks. So we belong to a number of municipal sort of group networks, the National League of Cities, U.S. Conference of Mayors. All of those entities were working hard to advocate for food response from the federal level. And so we were putting our voice in with that. And then because the city of Providence doesn't manage many of our food distribution policies or mechanisms, it's really the child nutrition programs that we manage. A lot of the work that we did was really trying to reinforce state and federal level policies and communication. We wanted to serve as a validator for state agencies. We wanted to make sure that our residents were getting that information. Sometimes we were translating that information, but really serving as that second validator of really important information as it related to food, but also COVID response in general.
Thank you so much, Ellen. I think collaboration, we've heard over again, coordination, and I'd like to close out this panel discussion with a quote from Margaret Mead. "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." Thank you, URI, for giving us this opportunity to share our work with all of you. Happy Inauguration Day.
Thank you so much, Carol, for moderating that fantastic panel. And what a great quote as well. I really appreciate all the speakers and panelists we've had today. As I've mentioned at the start of the day, the Rhode Island Food Center at URI will be hosting several follow-on events about food security and food access. Here's the video about the 3 upcoming events we have in February and March. Also, please visit our website to register to these events. And again, you can follow up on Twitter at URI_BEC to get more news and updates from the Business Engagement Center and the Food Center. As a last note, I would just like to ask everyone on this call to consider supporting our students through the URI Students First Fund. This is an emergency fund for URI students with demonstrated financial need. This fund, as Kathy Collins mentioned, helps students not only access additional funding for technology and academic needs, but provides them with housing, food, and everything else so they can focus on obtaining their very important degree. As you've learned today, there's a great need among our student population, and we hope you will consider donating to this fund. To learn more, please visit urifae.org/SFF to see how you can make a difference for our URI students. Again, I would like to thank our event staff, Sharon Pavignano, Katie McGuinn, Leah Cooper, Olivia Williams, as well as Sky Sabin Productions for helping us with the farm videos today. I would especially like to thank our live streaming partner, the URI Harrington School of Communications and Media, and Leah, who comes from there. Here's a little bit more about the Harrington School.
At URI's Harrington School of Communication and Media, every day is an exploration.
With global learning opportunities
and high-profile internships,
Harrington prepares us to be critical media consumers
and creative media producers
in the rapidly changing 21st century marketplace.
In strategic communications.
In multimedia journalism.
In sports media.
In writing and rhetoric. In information analytics.
In digital media, film, and TV.
Our tight-knit learning community is tailored to build a solid foundation
for powerful creative communication.
And a lifetime of achievement and opportunity.
Wherever our passions lead. Discovery, opportunity, impact.
The Harrington School of Communication and Media at the University of Rhode Island. Visit today.
Thank you again, Leah Cooper and the Harrington School, for helping us make this virtual event possible. We definitely could not have done it without you. Once again, thank you everyone for attending the 2020 Rhode Island Food System Summit. Please visit our website to register for our upcoming events, and we really look forward to seeing you at one of them. Have a great day and happy inauguration.